Chapter 250. A nightmare's attack is not as scary as I thought it would be. Ji Nan quickly escaped from the illusion. He was also wondering about the power of the illusion. In the information he received, the nightmare was very dangerous. Often, break-world people who entered the dream world with their real bodies died there. Purple Will looked at him strangely. She thought to herself, if you do this, then no illusion will work. Indeed, if anyone could be like Ji Nan and kill without saying a word, then this sort of bewildering illusion would really be useless. But why could he do it? Purple Will did not understand. How could someone be so determined to exclude Zwazwa's memories? Was he not curious at all? She was the top existence below the 13 skies. She could ignore the home advantage and suppress red in the galaxy world. She was a superstar master. Ji Nan was familiar with the past of such a powerful person. As long as he had the slightest thought, the memories would surge out like a tidal wave. At this moment, Purple Will realized that this illusion was probably not a coincidence. Instead, it was deliberately set up by someone. It's a dream master. Purple Will told Ji Nan, Zwazwa controls Silent Destruction Sky. I cannot believe she has a dream master. Dream masters were special existences. Ji Nan did not know about them, but because he was going to enter the eternal dream world, he had to learn about them. People who were born with dream rule powers had to go through special training to become a dream master. It was normal for there to be very few of them. That was why Purple Will could not find help at the moment. He did not expect Zwazwa to have one. Silent Destruction Sky? Ji Nan caught another piece of information. 36 skies and 72 worlds. You must have heard of this, right? Yes. After getting Ji Nan's confirmation, Purple Will sighed. That was what they said in the past. Now, there are only 29 sky-class planes left. Zwazwa's Silent Destruction Sky is one of them. 36 skies and 72 worlds had become a general term. The status of a star boundary was ultimately determined by the strength of the Star Lord. Over the past 10,000 years, some heaven-grade astral realms had been removed from this list, and some world-grade astral realms had also been added. In the end, the number of astral realms had stabilized at 29. After listening to Ziyi's explanation, Ji Nan nodded silently. He realized that the identity of Zwazwa and Red was not what he had expected. According to the usual plot, Red was the realm lord who was in charge of a realm, while Zwazwa was undoubtedly the villain who was lurking in the dark, plotting to take over her foundation. But in reality, Zwazwa was a Star Lord of a higher level than Red. Rather than calling it a conspiracy to seize Red's foundation, it would be better to call it an invasion that was open and above board. In other words, you and Zwazwa have always known each other, right? Ji Nan recalled how the two of them had pretended to be strangers back in the private dungeon. Of course, Purple Will said casually. It's no secret that Zwazwa is in Nirvana heaven. We all thought that he had already forgotten what had happened in the past, but who would have thought? The battle of the astral realm was ultimately related to the grievances of tens of thousands of years ago, but Ji Nan just waved his hand. He had no interest in the backstory of these NPCs. Continue. Ji Nan said. Purple Will thought that he wanted her to continue talking about secrets from tens of thousands of years ago, but before she could speak, Ji Nan had already dashed out. Since the Nightmare Lord had been chased away, they naturally had to continue searching. What a strange person. Purple Will shook her head and turned to run in the other direction, but she immediately stopped. In that direction, there were clearly two familiar figures roaming about. Shadow Song and Purple Lightning. Found them. They found them. Granny Two's voice rang out in another area. Someone is attacking the dream spirit. It must be them. The dream spirit referred to the soul of the dreamer in the dreamland world. This was a term unique to dream masters. Dream masters had the ability to communicate with the consciousness of the dreamland world, so Granny Two was the first to notice the abnormality. Then, Granny, should we chase after them? Old Zhao carefully asked. Normally, chasing after them would not have required much thought, but this time, their opponents were a bit weird. He did not forget that when Granny Two went to check out Ji Nan's illusion, she almost fell on her butt. Of course, Granny too did not immediately make a decision. After a while, she said, "Chase." This was the first time Ji Nan had fought against both Shadow Song and Purple Lightning. More accurately, he was only fighting against Purple Lightning. Shadow Song's power recovered quickly, but he was still a step away from breaking the world. In front of elites like Ji Nan and Purple Will, Shadow Song had no power to fight. But the power that Purple Lightning displayed was beyond Ji Nan's expectations. This swordsman had been sleeping for 10,000 years. When he woke up, he used a sword mind that he had nurtured for 10,000 years. He displayed a power that shocked even Ji Nan. What was surprising was that now, he was doing exactly the same. Purple Lightning stood in front of Shadow Song with his sword. As a dream spirit, he could not recognize Ji Nan or Purple Will. He only knew how to fight based on his own instincts. It did not involve any rules. It was the purest sword in the world, and it came slashing down with shocking speed. The purple sword light slashed Ji Nan's body. It left a wound so deep that bones could be seen. Blood splashed everywhere. Ji Nan paused in surprise, waiting for the heretic god's body to recover on its own. Then, he saw Violet Lightning's figure quickly pounce towards Violet Will. Purple Will's body was surrounded by dark purple lines. The light was shining. It bounced Purple Lightning's sword away, but she was also knocked back. Although she was a Star Master, she did not have an astral world. She had been injured by Zwazwa before, so she could not gain the upper hand against Purple Lightning. When you go crazy, you'll even kill your own mother. TSK. Purple Will couldn't help but glare at Ji Nan. However, Ji Nan's figure had already disappeared. Ji Nan had an innate sense of the situation on the battlefield. He knew what he needed to do, and he also knew that his skill set was the most suitable for an assassin. His target, Shadow Song. Purple Lightning suddenly turned around, stabbing his sword at Shadow Song. However, he was too late. Or rather, it wasn't that he was too late. Ji Nan simply ignored his attack. Ji Nan appeared from the darkness. In pursuit of extreme speed, he didn't even use his sword. Instead, he reached out, grabbed Shadow Song's neck, and lightly twisted. The sound of bones snapping was incomparably clear. The petite Shadow Song slowly fell to the ground. Purple Lightning's sword easily stabbed into Ji Nan's chest, but Ji Nan simply grinned. Then, he suddenly disappeared, leaving Purple Lightning and Purple Will staring at each other. Chapter 251. Ji Nan leisurely floated to the side, completely ignoring the mother and son fight below. Ji Nan only cared about his own reward. Purple Will's life and death were not within the scope of his concern. The rescue mission was issued through the astral gate. Even if Purple Will died here, Ji Nan was not afraid of not getting the origin crystals. Now that Shadow Song had been rescued, as long as Purple Lightning's dream spirit was killed, Ji Nan's reward would not be able to escape. Even if Purple Will wanted to deny it, the astral gate would be responsible for investigating the mission's progress. Boom. Faced with Shadow Song's death, Purple Lightning's dream spirit, who was left with only her instincts, almost completely gave up on her swordsmanship. She used her sword like a knife, ruthlessly slashing at Purple Will. Every slash caused a terrifying shockwave, as if the entire dream world was shaking. Purple Will, who was already heavily injured, could only grit her teeth and endure. She was powerless to retaliate, but at least she could resist. As long as she could endure this round of attacks from Purple Lightning, boom, another slash fell. Purple Will's attention was only slightly distracted, and she was instantly struck by the sword. The purple smoke around her swayed uncontrollably. This kid, he's gotten stronger again. Purple Will did not know whether to laugh or cry. If she had come to the dream world to rescue her, only to die at her own son's hands, that would be a joke. The truly despicable one was that Ji Nan. Purple Will thought of this mercenary of hers. He had abandoned her and ran off alone, completely lacking the professionalism of someone who had been hired. Of course, she did not understand that players usually did not care about the life and death of NPCs without any additional rewards. They would only squeeze out every NPC's value. However, luck did not intend to let Ji Nan have it so easy. On the other side of the area, three figures suddenly barged in. It was Granny 2 and the Zhao brothers. That's the target's companion. Boss Zhao only needed to glance down to immediately determine Purple Lightning's identity. The persons were wanted to kill was Shadow Song, so naturally they were also looking for Shadow Song. However, Shadow Song had disappeared. Shadow Song existed as a dream spirit. When she died, her soul would naturally return to her body. There was no such thing as a corpse. Thus, Granny 2 and the other two, who had arrived a step later, did not realize that their mission had failed. Instead, their eyes lit up. Finding the target's companions meant that they weren't far from the target. However, at this moment, a shadow suddenly appeared behind the three of them. The shadow sword suddenly slashed down, and it had a strange direction. 3 slashes with one sword. Ji Yunan's sword was clearly going to kill all three of them at the same time. A Dream Master's body was not much stronger than an ordinary cultivator's. With Ji Yunan's current strength, he could indeed do this. The Zhao brothers did not even manage to grunt before their heads fell to the ground. They were just 2 superhumans, and when they faced Ji Yunan's sword, they could not even turn around. Granny 2 did not die under this sword. After all, she was a break-world being, and she was in the dream world. The most important thing was that she was prepared. That's right, even though there was no trace of Ji Yunan at the scene, Granny 2 did not let her guard down at all. Therefore, the moment the shadow aura appeared, Granny 2's figure suddenly turned illusory. It was as if she had merged with the dreamy world and dodged the sword. Very quickly, she reappeared not far away. Her forehead was covered in a cold sweat, and she was very scared. But now was not the time to be scared. The sword did not hit, but Ji Yunan's body was like a shadow. He floated in front of Granny 2 and stabbed again. This time, his target was her throat. In fact, no matter where he stabbed, as long as Granny 2 was hit by the sword, she would be torn to pieces by the shadow power. Granny 2 coldly smiled. It looked very normal, but it revealed a clear message. This was the dreamy world. If this was the outside world, someone like Ji Yunan could kill her as easily as killing a chicken. In the dreamy world, it was possible for things to be reversed. With a wave of Granny 2's hand, she had already received the will of the dreamy world. A strange wave landed on Ji Yunan's body, and at the same time, the nightmare beast began to fly towards them. A dream master could control a nightmare to kill his enemies. Now that Granny 2 was here, it was much easier for him to do so. When the weird wave landed on Ji Yunan, the scene in front of him started to change. It was only a moment, but it felt like it was stretched infinitely. Granny 2's body started to distort. One moment, she turned into a beautiful lady. The next moment, she turned into someone that Ji Yunan was familiar with. From the moment he arrived, Ji Yunyan, Lin Feng, Yang Lan, until the end, even Red, Purple Intent, and Shadow Song appeared in front of him. There were men and women, old and young. They were all people who had contact with Ji Yunan. Not a single one was missed. Even Ji Yunan himself could not remember how many people there were. Granny 2 stared at Ji Yunan with a gloomy gaze. Of course, she knew what Ji Yunan was going through. As long as one of these people could affect the other party's state of mind, this would be magnified many times until it filled up Ji Yunan's mind. As long as one could affect the other party's state of mind for a moment, it would be enough for the nightmare beast to swallow him. So what if you have a strong will? Don't tell me that there is no one in your memories who can affect you. The sword flashed. Ji Yunan's hand did not tremble at all. He did not stop moving either. The shadow sword directly cut off Granny 2's head. The nightmare beast's movement also stopped. The answer was, of course, no. No. Ever since Ji Yunan came to this world, there was no one who could affect him. He was like a traveler who always looked into the distance. Step by step, he walked through every land. The people he saw and the things he experienced were all left behind him. This was a person who would never look back. The moment before Granny 2's consciousness disappeared, she vaguely saw a trace of Ji Yunan's heart. Therefore, this realization appeared in her heart. Everything was a waste of effort. After breaking the illusion with one slash, Ji Yunan still had the time to look at her. He muttered, "This illusion is too weak. Does the body of the evil god have a built-in immunity to willpower checks? There was no such thing as an illusion in the game. Even if there was, it depended on the player's willpower attribute. It was impossible for the player to overcome it on their own. Therefore, Ji Nan really did not understand this. In the blink of an eye, the three Dream Masters were killed by Ji Nan. Below, the mother and son pair, Purple Will and Purple Lightning, had finally come to an end. The winner was, of course, Purple Will. After all, she was the Star Master and had a deep understanding of Purple Lightning's methods. However, for the sake of victory, she had paid a hefty price. This could be seen from her incomparably pale face. After waiting for Purple Lightning to fall, Ji Nan strolled to Purple Will's side and said confidently, "The mission is completed. We can go back and settle the rewards." "You still dare to mention rewards?" Purple Will was shocked by Ji Nan's shamelessness. "Did you make a huge contribution in this battle?" Chapter 252. No matter who killed more people, it wouldn't affect Ji Nan's reward. According to the Astral Gate's logic, even if Ji Nan killed his employer, it wouldn't have anything to do with his quest, unless his quest was a protection quest. Of course, this behavior would be recorded. If someone wanted to hire Ji Nan again, this record would be sent to the next employer. But this wasn't important. With 100,000 spirit stones in hand, Ji Nan didn't need any more quests. When Ji Nan exchanged 100,000 units of spirit stones for active origin energy, even the star spirits in the hall of the Astral Realm Gate paused for a while. Shadow Song's neighbor, Uncle Wang, please confirm your exchange request. In the many years of the Astral Gate's history, there had never been a strange exchanger like Ji Nan. He had exchanged 100,000 spirit stones for active sources at once. Whether it was a Star Lord or a World Breaker, it was difficult to use such a large number of sources. This exchange was even more incredible. Active sources weren't collectibles. If they weren't used quickly, they would lose their effectiveness. Who could use so much at once? If there was a chance, Ji Nan would tell them that the evil god temple could. Faced with 100,000 spirit stones for active sources, the evil god temple swallowed them without hesitation. Then, it began to slowly digest them. So, Ji Nan looked at the evil god temple. From time to time, there would be a notification saying, "Godfire pollution." His sin value was slowly increasing. It will take about 2 or 3 days. Ji Nan looked at the growth rate and immediately made a judgment. The active origin was the divine fire, and by polluting the divine fire, the sin value gained would slow down or even decrease. This was within Ji Nan's expectations. In fact, even if he hunted gods in the later stages of the game, if he killed too many gods of the same level, his sin value would be limited. This setting was to encourage players to challenge new heights. It was also to prevent players from taking advantage of loopholes. If there wasn't such a setting, players would definitely be able to keep gods in captivity. Because of this, Ji Nan was temporarily idle. He stayed in his residence in Purple Civ Sky, quietly waiting for the day his sin value reached 2,500. However, in the process of waiting, he welcomed a guest. A rare guest. Ji Nan exclaimed in surprise as he looked at Purple Bolt. Ji Nan's residence in the Violet Civ Heaven was no secret. After all, he was searching right under Shadow Song's nose. Even Purple Will could easily find him. However, Ji Nan was still rather surprised that Purple Bolt would come to visit him alone. Did something happen to that brat, Shadow Song? This was Ji Nan's first reaction. "I'm not interested in accepting any more quests." "She's fine," Purple Bolt said. "I'm just here to act as bait to attract some people's attention." Ji Nan suddenly understood. "You two are finally willing to part ways." Purple Bolt smiled calmly. Someone killed her right in front of her. She needs to learn her lesson. He was talking about the scene in the world of dreams. Even though it was a dream, it didn't mean that the two of them didn't understand what had happened afterward. They remembered the scene in the dream very clearly. It was the guy in front of them. He was like a natural-born assassin. Even with his protection, Shadow Song had died without being able to fight back. After that, Purple Bolt was scared. He was also glad that this person had not been hired by the enemy. You came all the way here just to tell me this? Ji Nan did not care about what Purple Bolt was saying. He just asked. With his current power, he was no longer afraid of world breakers. Plus, he had Sky God Descends to back him up. That shape-shifting god skill would help him a lot, even after he leveled up to level 5. After all, it was the third rule. Purple Bolt shook his head. He stood up and said, I just came to confirm your position. Now, I am sure. After that, Purple Bolt's body disappeared from Ji Nan's residence. Ji Nan looked at him strangely. Han Sen didn't think he had a position. How could this person confirm it? After Purple Bolt left Ji Nan's place, he appeared next to Purple Will. How is it? Is it possible that he is on Zwazwa's side? Don't worry. Purple Bolt shook his head. He doesn't seem interested in our fight. He isn't even interested in the origin crystals. No matter what Purple Bolt confirmed, Ji Nan's leveling up was not going to be stopped by anyone. The active original source that Evil God Hall had eaten was still being digested, but his sin points had reached 2,500. He had enough points. Ji Nan's will sank into Evil God Hall. His heart was calm. Level up. When Ji Nan gave the command, Evil God Hall had a big change. On Ji Nan's personal interface, the laws of replacement, resurrection, and heavenly God lit up one after another. In the end, they surrounded Shadow and connected to it. The process of leveling up to level 5, in this world, was when world breakers perfected their own rules. They completed the process. For Ji Nan, it was a process of combining the 3 rules he had chosen with his core. Replace came from the Shadow rule, so it was the easiest to connect. Rebirth was driven by the Shadow power, so it was not difficult to combine. Only the Sky God rule progressed very slowly. But the connection between the 3 rules and the core was getting weaker. That was what Ji Nan had created. No matter how slow the progress was, it would be completed one day. No matter how strong the rules were, they could not escape from Evil God Hall. The Sky God rule was completely taken over by the Shadow. The golden body that represented Sky God on the icon had turned black. Ji Nan did not doubt that if he used Sky God Descends now, he would become a dark version of Sky God. The 3 rules and the Shadow combined. Ji Nan's Evil God body leveled up again. It was even stronger than before. An indescribable power came out of his body. Ji Nan felt his body swell up. It was like he was going to explode. If ordinary people were in this situation, they would have been worried sick. They would have been afraid they would have exploded. But Ji Nan was calm. He had already experienced this kind of situation too many times. The evil god body was something that defied nature. It would have this effect in the later stages. Leveling up complete. 4 calm and emotionless words appeared on the notification panel of the evil god's palace. Ji Nan took a deep breath. He knew this was not the end. It was just the beginning. When his consciousness returned to reality, it was in the world of immortals and demons. Lan Sai had painstakingly restored the original form of the world, which she called World Stone, and it was floating in front of Ji Nan. Even in Ji Nan's many years of gaming, he had never had such a good opportunity. Chapter 253. How strong was a rank 5? If Ji Nan was compared to himself when he was a rank 4, there was not much of a qualitative leap. The strengthening of his physical strength and the shading of the rules were all to pave the way for his future. The impact on his actual combat ability was not as great as he thought. An opponent that could be defeated at rank 5 could also be defeated at rank 4 with tactics. An opponent that could be defeated at rank 4 could also be defeated at rank 5. However, there was a fundamental difference between rank 5 and rank 5. This difference was not in strength, but qualification. Rank 5 meant that Ji Nan was qualified to take over the God Nation. External fire seed detected. Ignite the divine fire. When this embryonic origin appeared in front of Ji Nan, the evil god's temple immediately sent a notification. The evil god's temple was like a loyal assistant, dutifully translating external information for Ji Nan and receiving external power without making any mistakes. Yes. Ji Nan didn't even think about it and directly gave an affirmative answer. You want to wait until the origin is stronger? No need. Ji Nan firmly believed that once the God Nation was established, the speed of this world's expansion would be far faster than before. Of course, Ji Nan did not hide his return from Lan Sai and Yang Xiaoxiao. They were standing next to Ji Nan. At this moment, the world in their eyes suddenly changed. The sky seemed to darken all of a sudden. The sky that was originally damaged also stopped completely at this moment, and then began to repair itself. At the center of the continent, where Ji Nan and the other two were standing, an exquisite, majestic, and gloomy palace appeared out of thin air. This is. The two girls looked at this scene in astonishment. Lan Sai was a little better. She had seen miracles in the God of Flowers God Nation, but Yang Xiaoxiao could not understand it at all. It was not a camouflage, nor an illusion. It was a real palace. The two girls subconsciously took a few steps forward and finally saw the words on the plaque of the palace. They did not recognize them, but the meaning of these 3 words was directly reflected in their hearts. The evil god's temple. An inexplicable shadow seemed to be slowly growing from the back of the palace, shrouding the hearts of the 2 women. Ji Nan didn't care about what they thought. He had finally gotten his god's kingdom, which meant that his game had entered a whole new stage. From this moment onwards, his path to leveling up was no longer to directly strengthen himself, but to indirectly achieve his goal of leveling up by building a powerful divine kingdom. Evil God's Temple, Core Building, Foundation of God's Kingdom, Level 0. This was the notification that automatically popped up when Ji Nan's gaze landed on the Evil God's Temple. This Evil God's Temple was exactly the same as the one in Ji Nan's mind. Now, the one in his mind was only a shadow, and the real one had appeared in the Divine Kingdom. If Ji Nan wanted to complete his first-class advancement, he only needed to upgrade the Evil God's Shrine to Level 1. However, completing this upgrade was not easy at all. Ji Nan needed at least 6 Tier 0 buildings. After officially possessing the Divine Kingdom, Ji Nan's interface in the Evil God's Temple immediately changed. Some data that had never appeared before finally appeared. Wood, 0 ores, 0 sulfur, 0 crystals, 0 mercury, gemstones, gold. A series of resources appeared on the interface. Of course, the numbers behind them were all 0. However, Ji Nan was not in a hurry. Such Tier 0 resources could be easily collected even in a mortal society. There was no pressure at all. The data behind it represented the power that the Divine Kingdom could provide for Ji Nan. Divine power, one of course, this was not to say that the entire immortal demon world only had one divine power. Instead, the current Tier 0 Evil God's Shrine had an upper limit of 1 divine power. With Ji Nan's current ability, he would need at least 1,000 divine power to be of any help to him in battle. Ji Nan's first building target was the resource market. New players often built barracks and technology research centers as soon as they arrived. However, experts like Ji Nan knew that the building that saved the most time was definitely the resource market. This was because the resources required for Tier 0 buildings were very common, but they were usually very complicated. They had to be transported to the Evil God's Shrine for them to take effect, which undoubtedly wasted a lot of time. The function of the resource market was to exchange resources of the same level. Of course, the price would not be 1:1. If it was wood for gemstones, the ratio could be as high as 5:1. 5 units of wood could be exchanged for 1 unit of gemstone. On the other hand, exchanging gemstones for wood was also 5:1. No matter how one looked at it, it was a black-hearted merchant. However, to save time in the early stages, it did not matter if he was black-hearted. 500 units of wood, 300 units of ore, 50 units of gold. Ji Nan made a long list and handed it to Yang Xiaoxiao. Yang Xiaoxiao looked at the list and was stunned for a long time. Teacher, how much is 1 unit? Wood, what kind of wood is it? The amount doesn't matter, and neither does the type. Ji Nan waved his hand and said, collect as many resources as you can from the list and transport them to the Evil God's Shrine. The resources that the Evil God's Shrine needed were not limited to the type. It had its own way of measuring them. Excessive resources could be converted through the market in the future. There was no need to worry about resources. Instead, the most important thing to build a building was points. Currently, Ji Yunan was still lacking a lot. To build a resource market, apart from a series of resources, he also needed a large number of points. How much? A total of 10,000. The 100,000 spirit stones that he had exchanged for sin points had long been used up when he was promoted to rank 5. Now, Ji Yunan was a pauper. However, adding up the points he had spent from rank 1 to rank 5, it was probably only 10,000. Now, building a building required 10,000. This was F*King inflation. As a veteran player, Ji Yunan had expected the price of goods that had been complained about by many new players, so he wasn't surprised. This was originally a deliberate design by the game designers to prevent players from saving money in advance and skipping the initial stage of the Kingdom of God. As for the method to earn points after reaching rank 5, Ji Yunan had actually mastered it a long time ago. That was the private instance dungeon. Private instance dungeons were used for interaction between players. In the game, it was a tool to make money. Lan Sai, come with me. Ji Yunan's voice came from afar. His figure had already walked into the evil god's shrine. Lan Sai did not understand. She looked back at Yang Xiaoxiao, who was also at a loss. She could only follow Ji Yunan's footsteps. In the spacious evil god's shrine, Ji Yunan stood quietly in the center. There was a red door beside him. You have successfully promoted to rank 4. Not bad. Ji Yunan looked at her with a smile. It's time to test your strength. Lan Sai was stunned for a moment. Then, she suddenly became spirited. All these years, Ji Yunan had been providing her with cultivation resources. She had been waiting for this opportunity for a long time. She needed a chance to prove that she was not a good-for-nothing who was waiting to die. Murder or arson? Lan Sai asked subconsciously. Ji Yunan glanced at her. Young man, don't be so impulsive. Behind this door is the splendid world. You will know what you need to do after you enter. Okay. Lan Sai nodded her head and walked towards the door. You can resurrect if you die inside. I hope you can make good use of this ability. Also, Lan Sai quickly walked forward. She only left behind a sentence. I will not die even once. 5 seconds later, Lan Sai walked out of the door with a black face. Chapter 254. If it was 5 seconds ago, it would take Lan Sai half a day to understand what starting point kill meant. However, after experiencing the terrifying meteorite at the beginning of the splendid world, Ji Yunan didn't need to explain any further. She understood the name just by hearing it. What should I do? Lan Sai didn't say what that meant, but her meaning was clear. Ji Yunan naturally still remembered the strategy of the splendid world in his heart. After roughly explaining it to Lan Sai, he sent her to continue throwing her life away. This instance dungeon wasn't easy, and it was far more difficult to solo. When Ji Yunan led the 3 Starlords to explore it, they were wiped many times. Even if Lan Sai had the guide, she still had to pay the tuition fee. Lan Sai's figure disappeared from the evil god's temple, and Ji Yunan looked at the other side of the temple. There was the instance dungeon interface. The first private instance dungeon lit up, and it was now red. Red meant that someone was in the middle of a private instance dungeon. This was the function of a private instance dungeon in a divine kingdom. Once it was set up, divine envoys would enter the private instance dungeon, and every time they cleared it, they would earn points for the divine kingdom. Splendid World was a 4-person instance dungeon, but Ji Yunan only had one divine envoy, Lan Sai, so he could only let her do it alone. Under Yang Xiaoxiao's leadership, a group of shadow servants began to collect and transport resources. In the following period of time, all kinds of resources would be continuously transported to the evil god's temple. There was no need to worry about resources for the time being, even if it took some time. The construction of a divine kingdom wasn't something that could be done overnight. The most important thing right now was for Ji Yunan to recruit more divine envoys and unearth more private instance dungeons. There were no requirements for the recruitment of divine envoys. As long as Ji Yunan was willing and the target agreed, they could become his divine envoy. This was much easier than being a god. When a god recruited divine envoys, the most important thing was faith. Evil gods and gods had many similarities, but they also had the most important difference. Evil gods didn't need faith. From godfire to divine kingdom, Ji Yunan's path seemed to be no different from that of an ordinary god. However, when it came to things related to faith, it was far less complicated than that of a god. As for the source of the private instance dungeon, Ji Yunan already knew about it. What he needed was the translation of the world will. In this regard, Ji Yunan thought of a suitable candidate, and his figure instantly disappeared from the divine kingdom. The star realm. Red Tail stood on the land of Heavenly Kingdom Star and couldn't help but sigh. His mood was a little complicated. She had thought that she would never return to this place, and even if she did, she would never return with such an identity and attitude, a loser. To be precise, they were traitors. The secret translation method was a secret of the entire Green Hill tribe. It was not something that belonged to Red Tail alone. If she leaked the translation method to outsiders, she would be considered a traitor. This logic sounded right, but Red Tail knew better than anyone that it was just a joke. The translation method was very precious, but it was not so precious that he would have to die if he taught it to others. Even if it was within the star dimension, many great figures knew of this secret technique, and many of them had even been passed down by the Green Hill clansmen. Were they also treated as traitors? Of course not. On the contrary, these people held high positions in the tribe precisely because they used the resources of the tribe, and even their own bodies, to successfully contact the great figures. In the Green Hill clan, there were many resources like the translation method, which were used to be offered to some top powerhouses in exchange for their protection. And to be able to climb up to these powerhouses, it depended on the unremitting efforts of the clansmen. Today's Green Hill clan was such a strange group that constantly gambled. You will not die. You will be imprisoned in the underground water dungeon of the clan forever, despicable traitor. A woman who looked somewhat similar to Red Tail, but younger, said calmly. Red Tail glanced at her and then smiled silently. The truth of the tribe, of course, would not be told to every clansman. The girl in front of him, who could be regarded as his niece, was obviously still in the stage of being ignorant. Perhaps one day, when she was given as a gift to a great figure, she would understand all the secrets. Red Tail wore a pair of shackles on his hands, and his power of principle was imprisoned. He silently followed the girl forward until they arrived at a quiet and secluded mountain. In ancient times, this Green Hill mountain was once the holy land of the diamonds. And now, it was just a high-class brothel. A hint of mockery flashed in Red Tail's eyes, but he did not stop. A woman was slowly walking toward him. The woman was dressed in green, and her hair casually fell to her waist. There was a strange charm in her walk. Mother. The girl who led Red Tail bowed slightly in front of the woman. Leave this to me. Yes. A moment later, the green-clothed woman walked beside Red Tail, and said with a smile, Come to think of it, Sister Red hasn't been back for over 100 years, right? Red Tail looked at her coldly. I just came back. Oh, I forgot about the incident at Shanghai Pavilion. The green-clothed woman continued to smile with her lips pursed. Previously, Shanghai Pavilion had mobilized all extraordinaires to come to the Central Galaxy to register, and Red Tail had naturally returned. However, it was unknown if the green-clothed woman had really forgotten or mentioned it intentionally. The green-clothed woman and Red Tail were of the same generation. Of course, her name was not as simple as Green Tail. Her name was Su Yufei. In the Green Hill tribe, having an official name meant that one was already married, and that was the case with Su Yufei. In fact, in her generation, the only one who still used the clan name was Red Tail. If you want me to come back, just say it. You even have to use the excuse of rebellion. Red Tail did not answer Su Yufei's question, but said with disdain. Isn't it because we miss you, Sister Red? Su Yufei pulled Red Tail's sleeve and said gently. She did not look like a mother at all. Instead, she looked like an innocent little girl. However, what she said next was not the slightest bit naive. Calling Sister Red a rebel is the common intention of the 6 clan leaders. Su Yufei whispered into Red Tail's ear, this time, I'm afraid I'll have to let you enjoy your old age. Red Tail, who had always been calm and steady, finally could not help but turn around this time. He looked at Su Yufei blankly, as if trying to find traces of lies on her face. But there was none. She did not need to lie because Green Hill was in front of her. The tribe's attitude toward her would soon be revealed. Red Tail took a deep breath and looked at the quiet and secluded peak. He felt a little helpless in his heart. She could not resist the arrangements of the tribe. The freedom she had was all because of an elder, but now, she did not forget who she had bet on. Although that person had disappeared a long time ago, he was still a Breakworld big shot. Chapter 255. At the peak of Green Hill, in a quiet and secluded house, 6 women with different appearances and extraordinary looks sat around it. It was rare for so many people to gather in the house, and it seemed a little crowded. More importantly, there were 2 people, one old and one young, sitting beside the 6. The old man was calm, but the young man looked a little impatient. As if seeing the young man's mood, one of the women said, "The person has been brought to Green Hill. Please be patient, old Chen and Mr. Jin." The young man, who was called Mr. Jin, only grunted. The old man smiled and said, "Then I will have to trouble the 6 chiefs. No, it is the honor of the Green Hill tribe to work for old Chen." The 6 women quickly spoke. In their eyes, old Chen, who was accompanying them, seemed more frightening, even though he looked very approachable. For the Green Hill tribe, it was normal for people to fail in their bets. Whether the person who was chosen died or turned against them, the tribe would not punish the people because of that. If they had scruples even when betting, then how could they gamble with a small amount of money? Xinghai Pavilion was in chaos, and Yu Ju's strange death was a mystery. No one in the outside world knew who killed him. The astral world's impression of Ji Yunan was that he had single-handedly killed his way into the central sector, but he was ambushed and disappeared. But he was a world breaker. As long as there was no proof that he was dead, who would risk capturing Red Tail? This was also something that Red Tail could not figure out. "Let's go." Su Yufei seemed to become cold all of a sudden. She pushed Red Tail, who was still in a daze. "You will know when we reach the top." Hearing her words, Red Tail nodded, and the 2 of them walked to the peak of Green Hill. Of course, there were already people waiting for them here. Including the 6 chiefs of the Green Hill tribe, including the elder who admired Red Tail, and 2 people, one old and one young. Pavilion Master Chen. Red Tail bowed in fear. Even his hands were shaking, but there was not much panic in his eyes. There was only confusion. Red Tail did not recognize the young man, but the old man was very familiar. This was an old man with white hair and a white beard. Many people had forgotten who he was, but Red Tail, who had grown up listening to his stories, did not. This old man was called Chen Han. It was a very simple name, but his identity was definitely not simple. He was the previous owner of Xinghai Pavilion. Yes, before Yu Ju and the other 2, there was only one pavilion master in Xinghai Pavilion, and that was this old man called Chen Han. Back then, when his fame had reached its peak and he was about to rule over the entire Star Realm, he had handed over the Xinghai Pavilion to 3 juniors and left on his own. Some said that he had found a way to advance, while others said that he was too lonely after being invincible, so he abandoned the Xinghai Pavilion and went to the outside world. Very few people knew that he had actually gone deep into space. At the same time, in the depths of space. "You're really wronging Chen Han by letting him do this kind of thing." There wasn't much mockery in Red's eyes, and even her tone was very calm, but it made people feel that she was mocking him. Who was Chen Han? He was the person who had always stood behind Red, and he was also the person who had suddenly betrayed her at the most critical moment. Red was never a fool. Xinghai Pavilion was just a cover that she had placed outside. The real elite forces were all concentrated in her palace. It was just that even she did not expect that Zuozua, who had not set foot in the Star Realm for 10,000 years, would have a spy like Chen Han. Thus, overnight, she successfully became a loner and had no choice but to lead the power of an entire realm to fight against Zuozua. "I didn't ask him to do this." Zuozua shook her head and said, "I gave him a way to advance, and he trapped 9,000 of your elites. That's all." Zuozua was telling the truth. She and Chen Han were just trading, not subordinates. Otherwise, when they had surrounded and killed Ji Yunan and snatched the origin, Qian Han would have been a part of it. Then what does he want to do? Red did not ask this question. Her gaze fell on the young man beside Qian Han. The Golden Giant clan? Qian Han helped Red up unhurriedly and smiled. No need to be so courteous. I am here to ask you about the whereabouts of a person. Ah, who is it? Red Tail pretended to be curious, but in reality, she knew better than anyone else. Who else could she know that could make this person worry? Ji Yunan. The familiar name entered her ears, but it was not Qian Han who spoke. Instead, it was the golden young master next to him who quickly walked up. He grabbed Red Tail's hair, and his eyes were filled with violence. You are his most important subordinate in the 6-star region. Don't tell me you don't know. Red Tail's eyes showed a hint of helplessness. She knew that the person in front of her dared to interrupt Chen Lao, so he was definitely not someone to be trifled with. But the problem was, she really did not know. Red Tail, you better think carefully before you speak. A gentle yet cold voice came from the front. Of course, Red Tail recognized her. It was the one among the 6 clan leaders who did not think highly of her. However, in the current situation where the entire clan was in danger, she probably did not have the mood to gloat. She could only hope to push herself out to block the disaster, right? Red Tail's eyes swept over the others, and there was only a similar indifference, including the elder who had always thought highly of her. Red Tail understood this indifference very well. In the face of the entire clan's safety, personal feelings were nothing at all. I don't know. So, Red Tail shook her head and said calmly. If she knew the whereabouts of Ji Yunan, she might not hesitate to betray him. Unfortunately, she really did not know. Qian Han shook his head with some regret, and the golden young master showed a smirk. Very good. The golden young master kicked Red Tail's knee joint, and the latter suddenly knelt on the ground. The golden young master's palm was already raised high. Under the gaze of Red Tail and the 6 clan leaders of Green Hill, the golden young master's body suddenly expanded, and suddenly soared to the height of a few people. His body was even glowing with a strange golden color. The Golden Giant clan. One of the 6 clan leaders said in shock. Su Yufei, who had been bowing and standing beside them, looked at the golden young master with a strange look in her eyes. The Golden Giant was one of the alien races. It was only a legend in the astral world, and no one had ever seen it before. Such an existence was the favorite big shot of the Green Hill clan. The aura around the golden young master's body became heavier and heavier, almost suffocating people. The first to bear the brunt was Red Tail. Of course, Red Tail understood that the other party was trying to force her to submit, but I really did not know. Red Tail wanted to cry but had no tears. She felt that she had completely suffered an undeserved disaster. Wait. At this moment, Qian Han's voice suddenly sounded. The golden young master looked at him doubtfully, and there was a hint of questioning in his eyes. With his background and violent personality, even Qian Han could not completely suppress him. Chapter 256. Ji Yunan was here. There was no need to doubt that because he appeared out of thin air. He stepped into the little house on top of the green hill and stood in front of everyone. Qian Han saw Ji Yunan appear and immediately greeted him. Are you Mr. Ji Yunan? But Ji Yunan did not even look at him. His eyes were on Red Tail, who was behind him. Red Tail was still kneeling on the ground. Her long black hair was being held by Mr. Jin. She looked very pitiful. However, Ji Yunan didn't have the slightest intention to pity her. His gaze didn't even waver as he walked up to her. Are you willing to be my oracle? Ji Yunan asked as if it was a routine job. I am willing. Red Tail suddenly shouted. She did not know what a messenger was. She did not know what she needed to do, but she knew this was her only chance of survival. Mr. Jin maintained his golden giant form. He looked very powerful. He stared at Ji Yunan and said, Ji Yunan? You came at the right time. If you are a descendant of the Golden Clan, come back with me. A descendant of the Golden Clan? When those 6 words came out, not only were Su Yufei and the 6 leaders shocked, but even Red Tail, who was on the ground, looked strange. No one knew Ji Yunan's power better than she did. That extremely dark and mysterious rule power did not look like it had anything to do with the Golden Clan. Only Mr. Jin was very sure. It was because he saw the video Chen Han gave him. It was the scene of Ji Yunan killing Yu Ju and activating Sky God descending. That was right. The scene of Ji Yunan killing 3 top break world people was not seen by others, but it could not be hidden from Chen Han's eyes. This old man, who stood at the top of the world many years ago, had even betrayed the master of Galaxy World. He had been watching this place. When the words Golden Clan fell into his ears, even Ji Yunan could not help but look at Mr. Jin. He was too lazy to deal with the NPCs. It was not like he could not hear them. Looking at young Master Jin's expression, it was easy for him to understand what he had misunderstood. Speaking of which, the appearance of a descending god was indeed somewhat similar to the Golden Giant's true form, but there was still a fundamental difference between the two. The Golden Giants only had a golden color to their bodies. At the end of the day, they were still made of flesh and blood, while the bodies of Empyrean gods were completely formed by the laws. However, this was no longer important. After reaching Tier 5, his heavenly god law was completely dominated by the power of shadows. He could no longer transform into a golden heavenly god. At most, he could transform into a black heavenly god. Therefore, Ji Yunan still did not speak. He just took a step forward and casually punched young Master Jin. This punch looked ordinary, and it wasn't even that fast. The Golden Prince couldn't help but sneer. In his opinion, this Ji Yunan didn't even reveal his true form and wanted to exchange blows with him. This was really, why did the punch already arrive? Before the Golden Prince could finish his thought, the seemingly unhurried punch landed on his face. A shocking pain came from his face. Young Master Jin felt as if his entire face had sunk in, and his body was involuntarily sent flying backward. In the eyes of the 6 clan leaders of Green Hill and Su Yufei, the body of the Golden Clansman, who was arrogant just now, was rapidly shrinking as he flew backward. He was actually knocked out of his true form by Ji Yunan's punch. This also meant that this young Master Jin wasn't actually a pure-blooded golden giant. Otherwise, his true form would be a giant. Boom! Young Master Jin landed heavily on the ground. The house was directly smashed into a deep pit. His facial bones were completely broken, and his face was covered in blood. He hadn't completely lost consciousness, but he was close to it. After all, Ji Yunan had already advanced to Tier 5. Just like ordinary Star Lords, his law power didn't have any fundamental change, but the body of the evil god did. The Tier 5 body of the evil god became stronger, more extreme, and more mysterious. His strength was still not comparable to the Empyrean state at Tier 4, but his speed was even better. The Golden Prince's seemingly slow speed was actually the manifestation of extreme speed. Chen Han, who was originally planning to stop him, stopped his actions at this moment. He had already taken a step forward. At this time, he maintained the action of taking a step, as if he was frozen. It looked a little funny. However, he was Chen Han after all. After a moment, he retracted his leg as if nothing had happened and began to carefully size up Ji Yunan. Chen Han's vision was very high, and his vision was very accurate. Therefore, he was very sure that the punch just now did not carry any law power at all. It was just pure strength. However, his rationality was roaring. Could pure strength really reach that level? Ji Yunan still had the attitude of ignoring everyone. After confirming Redtail's wishes, he only did 2 things: sweep away the obstructors and take Redtail away. "Sir, please wait." A clear voice sounded, and Su Yufei's figure had already blocked in front of Ji Yunan. A clan leader behind her almost jumped up. "Yufei, are you crazy?" Su Yufei quickly said, "Sir, are you looking for Red Tail for the translation method? My clan has a more complete version, as long as sir." Is what she said true? Ji Yunan did not wait for her to finish and directly turned to ask Red Tail. At this moment, Red Tail's gaze was almost about to swallow Su Yufei. This was completely a drastic measure. If Ji Yunan felt that the value of the Qingqiu clan far exceeded his, then he could naturally abandon it at will. Yes. But Red Tail did not have the courage to lie, and there was no need to lie because Su Yufei could take out the complete translation method with a flip of her hand. Ji Yunan nodded in satisfaction and said to Su Yufei, "Give it to me." Su Yufei's tense face finally relaxed a little. She felt that she had gambled correctly. This person was indeed here for the translation method. A charming smile appeared on her face, and she moved closer to Ji Yunan and said, "This translation method is a secret in the NU family. However, if Sir wants it, as long as..." Bang! Before she finished her condition, Ji Yunan's fist had already landed on her face. Su Yufei's head was not as hard as young Master Jin's. Facing Ji Yunan's fist, her head directly burst open, and her body fell softly. Ji Yunan retracted his fist, and there was not even a trace of blood left on his white jade-like skin. At his level, his body would no longer be stained with dust, and the filth of the secular world could not leave a trace on his body at all. Su Yufei's death made the hut fall into dead silence again, and Ji Yunan shifted his gaze to the 6 clan leaders. "Take out the complete translation method." Ji Yunan's calm and indifferent voice sounded, "Don't talk about conditions, you know the consequences." So the 6 clan leaders fell into silence. Chapter 257. Ji Yunan understood the principle of equivalent exchange, but he only agreed with it. For the players, if everything was equivalent exchange, then what was the point of playing the game? The players were more than happy to be a group of locusts, stealing everything they could see and strengthening themselves with the highest efficiency. They never cared about what the victims thought. If I can't beat the monster, I need to buy scrolls, equipment, and potions. If I can beat it, of course, I'll just kill it and get the equipment. The 6 leaders looked at each other. They realized Su Yufei's suicidal behavior had triggered something, but the most important thing now was to get through this. "Yes, please wait. We will give you the translation method immediately," one of them finally said. Ji Yunan nodded and didn't say anything. He had always been patient when it came to things that he needed. In the Qingqiu clan, he needed a complete translation method, and so did Red Tail. He didn't just want the translation method, but he also wanted Red Tail's talent. After running the White Mist for 100 years, Red Tail had a lot of experience in running a reincarnation organization. If she rebuilt the White Mist, the efficiency would be higher than if Ji Yunan did it himself. That was his ultimate goal. Ji Yunan needed enough fog mirrors to open up more private dungeons for him. It was a shame there wouldn't be another talent like Red Tail in Green Hill. The reason was simple. Aside from her, the translation method was just a tool in Green Hill. No one had ever used it themselves. Deep in space. I didn't expect this. Red's calm voice had a rare hint of surprise. That surprise was directed at Ji Yunan. After Ji Yunan made his move, with Red and Zhuozhuo's level, it wasn't hard to see his true level. He is probably the youngest Star Master in history. Zhuozhuo found it funny. It's a shame. Red knew what he was regretting. Such a talent had come into contact with both of them, but they didn't grasp the opportunity. The opportunity to recruit him and the opportunity to kill him. Now, whether it was recruiting or killing, it was impossible. The Star Masters were all the same level. Very few Star Masters were affiliated with other Star Masters. To kill a Star Master was much harder than killing a World Breaker. Red fell silent, but Zhuozhuo continued, he just came back to take his things. You have at most 1 month. If she doesn't make a move now, there won't be a chance. The two of them had been in a stalemate for several years. Of course, they weren't just standing there foolishly. Zhuozhuo's oppression of the astral realm was constantly ongoing. Therefore, Zhuozhuo knew very well that Red was already an arrow at the end of its flight and wouldn't be able to last much longer. If Shadow Song wanted to act, this was his last chance. Red looked at him silently, and there seemed to be a smile in her eyes. You're scared. The complete translation method was soon presented to Ji Yunan. Red Tail once again became an appraisal master. The person who gave the translation method to Ji Yunan was Bai Qing, the senior who had always admired Red Tail. My apologies, sir. Apart from Red Tail, no one else in the clan has established a reincarnation organization. Bai Qing said pitifully, but she regretted it in her heart. After learning about Ji Yunan's specific request, She understood how lucky Redtail was. It turned out that being the leader of a reincarnation organization was her true value. Ji Nan couldn't help but feel a little regretful that he only got Redtail, but he still nodded and took the translation method. He turned around and was about to leave with Redtail. Qian Han's voice sounded at the right time. Your Excellency Ji Nan, I have something to tell you. Please wait. At this time, Qian Han was bowing slightly, standing next to young Master Jin. To be precise, he was standing next to young Master Jin's corpse. Even if it was the Golden Giant, it would only be able to bounce a few more times before the Grim Reaper descended upon it. Qian Han saw that young Master Jin couldn't be saved and felt helpless. After all, he was the one who took Ji Nan's image to find the Golden Clan. Now that something like this had happened, if he didn't give an explanation, how could the Golden Giant let him go? He had already calculated that no matter how Ji Nan answered, he would have a way to provoke the follow-up topic. However, he maintained his posture, but Ji Nan's voice didn't come for a long time. Qian Han raised his head in confusion. Where was Ji Nan's figure in front of him? Elder Qian. Bai Qing was standing next to him and said awkwardly, that person has left. Ji Nan didn't care about what Qian Han said at all. He went to the astral realm and left with what he wanted. That was all. Your Excellency, you killed a golden giant just like that. Redtail stood next to Ji Nan and said uneasily, that's an alien race. What is that? Ji Nan asked. All he knew about the Golden Giant clan was probably the appearance of young Master Jin's original body. Redtail looked at him as if he had seen a ghost. This person didn't know anything at all. Beyond the heavens, there are many strange races and living beings. They are called alien races. Redtail had never left the heavens in her life, and even her original body had never left the astral realm. However, this didn't affect her understanding of the outside world. And Ji Nan knew a lot about this. Living beings beyond the heavens? Perhaps it has something to do with the world of gods. Once I've settled down here, I can go investigate. Ji Nan pondered while stroking his chin. His thoughts didn't affect Ji Nan's movements. He had already brought Redtail to the evil god's temple in the God Kingdom. A faint purple light began to shine down. The purple light fell on Redtail, but she didn't resist. She just calmly accepted the baptism of the eerie aura. After a moment, she opened her eyes again. Her originally dark pupils had a hint of purple. Ji Nan nodded in satisfaction. Redtail had successfully become his second god's messenger. There was no limit to the recruitment of oracles, as long as the target submitted. However, this submission was not just for show. Otherwise, the evil god's temple wouldn't recognize them. Even if they hid it for a while, they would be immediately removed from the ranks of oracles if they had other thoughts in the future. My lord. Redtail, who had regained consciousness, bowed to Ji Nan to show her absolute obedience. Ji Nan only nodded calmly. Your mission is to rebuild White Mist. Get the complete translation method and choose a suitable target plane as soon as possible. White Mist wants to establish branches everywhere. Redtail already knew what Ji Nan needed her to do. She nodded in agreement. Then, she heard Ji Nan speak again. Do you know any of the more famous agents? Ji Nan wanted to recruit oracles to help him clear dungeons. The most suitable targets were, of course, the agents in the reincarnation organization. Redtail was stunned for a moment, then quickly said, yes, I know someone who is very suitable, but what? Ji Nan raised an eyebrow. She has already retired for many years. Now that she has children and grandchildren, I'm afraid she's unwilling to come out. Chapter 258. Zhong Dongsheng was very excited. Unlike Ji Nan, Tang Xian, and the others who had left the Minglu, he had remained inside the Minglu. He had come from the asteroid belt to the Red Carp branch, and then moved up step by step. Now, he had arrived at the central starfield. He could be considered to have reached the pinnacle of his life. The team of 7 he was in now was made up of extraordinaires above the nuance realm, and each of them had special abilities. They were truly an elite team. Such an elite team had suffered repeated setbacks in the current mission. In the end, under the leadership of their captain, They had come to seek help from a senior. It was said that it was this senior Guan who had led their captain into the sect. It was still unknown whether senior Guan would be willing to help with this mess. He hadn't expected to meet Ji Yunan here. What a pleasant surprise. Zhong Dongsheng hadn't forgotten that when Ji Yunan was still in the innate realm, he had already cleared the Ming-Lu's missions like it was a game. Until he left, Ji Yunan's mission completion rate had been 100%. The longer he stayed in the Ming-Lu, the more Zhong Dongsheng realized how terrifying Ji Yunan had been. It wasn't that he was strong, but that he was too well-rounded. So many types of missions hadn't been a problem for him. But now, in this situation, Ji Yunan had taken the initiative to come to him. It couldn't be any better. Ji Yunan, do you have time to chat with me? Zhong Dongsheng walked over to Ji Yunan's side once more, and he revealed a smile of an old friend as he spoke calmly. No. Haha, you're still as cold and humorous as ever. Zhong Dongsheng tried his best to smooth things over. It's our captain who wants to meet you, Eternal Domain Expert, and Wendy, nicknamed Ghost Sword. As if he had heard his name, the bearded man, and Wendy, turned his head and looked in the direction of Zhong Dongsheng and Ji Yunan. He was waiting for Ji Yunan to turn his head and look in his direction so that he could nod at the right time. This way, not only could he show his respect for the talent, but he could also show his status. And Wendy had been a captain for so many years, he was already familiar with this routine. However, what puzzled him was that Ji Yunan acted as if he didn't hear anything. Not to mention turning his head, he didn't even bat an eyelid. Ji Yunan? Zhong Dongsheng saw that he wasn't moving and shouted again, "You're such a busy man. Can't you find some time to meet our captain?" Ji Yunan finally turned around unhurriedly. "It's not that I don't have time, it's that you don't have time." In the next moment, before Zhong Dongsheng could understand what he meant, a loud noise came from outside. The glass at the entrance of the hall shattered, and the doors and windows were broken at the same time. The flying glass fragments caused the people in the hall to scream and curse angrily, but the scariest thing was yet to come. One by one, black-clothed figures rushed in, holding standard long sabers in their hands, crazily slashing at the guests present. This. Zhong Dongsheng stared at this scene, dumbfounded. He couldn't say anything for a while. Red Tail looked at Ji Yunan strangely, because this was what Ji Yunan had specifically instructed him to do. Only cold weapons could be used to kill an entire family. It had to be bloody and cruel enough to give Guan Hongchen the greatest amount of pressure. There were many people who had the same reaction as Zhong Dongsheng. This kind of vendetta was too rare on Planet Peach Blossom. This was Planet Peach Blossom. These people were so unscrupulous. Were they not afraid of the anger of the three elders? The three elders of Planet Peach Blossom were very powerful and experienced world breakers. Even the Xinghai Pavilion had to take care of their connections and power. They were the foundation of Planet Peach Blossom's extraordinary status. The crazy slaughter continued. The guests had already fled in all directions. Captain and Wendy was shocked at first, but then he was wild with joy. He and the others had just arrived and encountered this kind of thing. This was an opportunity, and Wendy knew very well that the overall strength of these black-clothed people was not very strong. The leader of the team was not even in the Eternal Domain realm. Many of them were only innate stage warriors. Wasn't this a favor that had been delivered to their doorstep? Attack! And Wendy shouted. He was the first to rush out. With a wave of his hand, he killed a black-clothed assassin. The other members of the elite team followed closely behind their captain. They joined in the fight against the assassins. There was only one exception. It was Zhong Dongsheng. He was still standing next to Ji Yunan, not daring to move. Judging from Ji Yunan's words just now, these assassins were obviously his doing. Zhong Dongsheng did not know what level Ji Yunan was at, but he had become a transcendent many years ago. Now, he could not be much weaker than Zhong Dongsheng. Zhong Dongsheng had to keep an eye on him. What confused him was that Ji Yunan did not seem to be doing anything. He just watched everything calmly. "Mister, do you want me to?" Red Tail asked softly. She saw that more than half of the black-clothed people had been killed in the blink of an eye. She could not help but feel anxious. If she attacked, the situation could be turned around in an instant. It's fine. Ji Yunan waved his hand. He did not expect much from Red Tail. His only goal was to lure Guan Hongchen out. His shadow body could also wipe out the entire family. However, it would cause too much of a commotion. He was afraid that the target would be scared away. Guan Hongchen had not appeared yet. It seemed like he was right. She was a calm woman. The black-clothed assassins were killed very quickly. Not only did Wendy and the others help, but the guests also came back to their senses and helped kill the black-clothed people. Moreover, Guan Hongchen's family had powerful cultivators in reserve. These assassins could not cause too much of a commotion. After a short while, the situation was completely under control. The main family finally appeared. The leader was a beautiful and mature woman. That's Guan Hongchen. Red Tail said to Ji Yunan. She did not care about Zhong Dongsheng at all. Her husband's surname is Zhu. He died a long time ago. Now, she's the head of the Zhu family. As Red Tail spoke, Wendy had already walked to Guan Hongchen's side and greeted her. Senior Guan. It's Xiao, and Guan Hongchen quickly recognized Wendy. Before he could speak, she said, I'll catch up with you later. Wendy hurriedly nodded. Guan Hongchen had no time to talk to him now that something like this had happened to the Zhu family. Guan Hongchen's methods were indeed powerful. She quickly calmed the situation down. Then, she slowly walked to Ji Yunan and looked straight at Red Tail. Lady Red Tail, it's been so many years. Are you still not willing to let me go? Her tone was polite but distant. It was obvious that her relationship with Red Tail was not as simple as a comrade in arms. Red Tail laughed softly. No matter what you think about what happened back then, I'm afraid you have no choice but to come out now. Before Guan Hongchen could speak, Wendy saw that this woman was actually his competitor. He immediately shouted, Senior, if someone uses their family to threaten you, you can come back to Ming Lu. Let's see who dares to openly oppose Ming Lu. In the astral realm, Ming Lu's reputation was still very useful. Thus, Wendy felt much more at ease when he mentioned the organization's name. He also kept giving Zhong Dongsheng looks. Who knew what this bastard was doing? He actually ran over to the other side. If Senior Guan misunderstood, wouldn't it be an undeserved disaster? When Guan Hongchen heard Wendy's words, he gave him a look to calm down. Then, he said, You've been away from the central starfield for so long. Have you forgotten where you are? Huh? Red Tail raised her eyebrows. She was about to speak when she heard Ji Yunan speak calmly. Someone's here. As soon as Ji Yunan finished speaking, a figure instantly appeared out of thin air in midair. It was an old man with white hair and a ruddy complexion. His face was filled with a frivolous smile. It was obvious that he was also an old playboy. When Guan Hongchen saw this old man, his expression instantly relaxed. Ha 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 ha. The old man stood in midair and glanced at Red Tail. He laughed heartily and said, The Peach Blossom Planet has only been peaceful for a few decades. I didn't expect that someone would come and cause trouble again. Huh? Before the old man could finish speaking, his expression suddenly changed. He saw the young man waving his hand lightly below him. Then, his hair stood on end, and he felt a great sense of danger in his heart. In the next moment, a giant shadow hand suddenly appeared in the air. It slapped down without any warning, and the old man was directly swatted to the ground like a fly. Guan Hongchen looked at this scene as if she had seen a ghost. Then, she saw the young man slowly stand up and step in front of her. Chapter 259. Ji Yunan's goal was always clear. He needed Guan Hongchen to be his god messenger, so everything he did was to serve that purpose. If it was necessary, he didn't mind killing all of Guan Hongchen's family and leaving her only one grandson. That way, he could force her to work for him. But now, he found a more efficient way. The old man, one of the 3 elders of the Peach Garden, was still lying in the ruins. The entire place was silent. Only Ji Yunan's footsteps could be heard. Even the sound of his footsteps was no different from a normal person's. That meant that after Ji Yunan reached level 5, he had put away all of his miraculous powers. If he didn't attack first, no one would be able to tell that he was a planet master. But he attacked, and he knocked out one of the 3 elders of the peach garden. This made Guan Hongchen's scalp go numb. She knew that this was not going to end well. And Wendy and the others were speechless. They didn't know who Ji Yunan was, but they at least knew one thing. The old man who had just appeared was a world breaker. To the Transcendent team, a world breaker was a very important person. But now, this important person had been slapped to the ground like a fly. Zhong Dongsheng was also shocked, but he always had this expression. It wasn't obvious now. Guan Hongchen took a deep breath and forced herself to calm down. What orders do you have, mister? Do something for me, or I will kill your entire family. Ji Yunan's orders were simple and to the point. Guan Hongchen didn't know what to say. She had never seen such an unreasonable person before. She never thought something like this would happen to her. She looked at Red Tail, and she finally understood why she had said that. Wait a moment. A voice interrupted Guan Hongchen's reply. It wasn't an Wendy, who was scared out of his wits. It was the old man, who was struggling to get out of the ruins. There was still blood at the corner of his mouth. After all, he used to be a top world breaker. Ji Yunan had reached level 5, but his rule powers hadn't improved much. He wouldn't be able to kill the old man with one hit. The old man glared at Ji Yunan. Young man, bang. Another palm fell. This time, it was Ji Yunan who personally attacked. His speed was so fast that his palm seemed to have crossed space and landed directly on the old man's head. The old man's head burst open in an instant, bursting into a bloody mist in midair and falling to the ground dejectedly. Thus, a deathly stillness that was far more terrifying than before enveloped everyone. When Guan Hongchen saw this, she didn't think for too long. She sighed softly and said, I'm willing to follow you, my lord. After personally witnessing one of the Peach Blossom's 3 elders being killed by Ji Yunan, Guan Hongchen no longer had any thoughts of resisting. He only followed behind Ji Yunan silently. She was not worried that the other party had other intentions. With this person's level of power, the only thing that could catch his eye was his mission level. Just as Guan Hongchen had expected, the other party took her to an unknown little world and told her what he wanted. I need you to help me clear Instance Dungeon. I already have the strategy, and I will give you an assistant. Ji Yunan led Guan Hongchen, who was now a god messenger, to the Beautiful World instance. Lan Saijing had been tortured by Beautiful World. He had not even cleared the first stage. He stood next to Ji Yunan with a dark face. Guan Hongchen could feel Lan Saijing's body. It was like a deep sea. It was like a tide, and it was scary. She carefully said, I understand. I will help you, my lord. Ji Yunan didn't care who was the leader. He just wanted to clear the Instance Dungeon. When you clear the Instance Dungeon, you can pick some resources here and send them to the Galaxy World. Ji Yunan understood the principle of using benefits to drive people. But he wouldn't let Guan Hongchen leave the God Kingdom just yet. The God Messenger wasn't completely safe. Even the gods who had faith in them had betrayed them before, let alone the players. Yes. Guan Hongchen was obedient. She happily accepted all of Ji Yunan's orders. Even though she didn't really understand the meaning of an Instance Dungeon, she could understand Ji Yunan's intentions. If she wanted to see her family again, she had to do her best to complete the mission. Oh, right. Ji Yunan suddenly spoke. If Red Tail was here, he would definitely be fearful of this word. Do you have any other friends who are good at this? Guan Hongchen was stunned. She seemed hesitant about betraying others. This Instance Dungeon can only allow 4 people at most. Yes. Red Tail was already looking for a suitable plane to rebuild the White Fog. After making arrangements for Guan Hongchen, Ji Yunan could take a break. The construction of a god kingdom wasn't something that could be done in a day or 2. Ji Yunan had already experienced this in the game. The Evil God game focused on a fast pace in the early stages to capture the players. But after level 5, the pace slowed down. The main goal was to kill time. This was also in line with the style of the game company. They would always try their best to keep the players who were already addicted. Ji Yunan's current goal was to upgrade the Evil God's Temple from level 0 to level 1. That way, he would have a level 1 God Kingdom and officially complete his first job transition. If he wanted the God Kingdom to provide him with combat power, he would have to wait until his God Kingdom was at least level 3 or 4. Level 1 Evil God's Temple required 6 level 0 basic buildings. All kinds of basic resources were being transported into the Evil God's Temple. He had already met half of the building requirements for the resource market. Because the God Kingdom wasn't technologically advanced, there was a huge surplus of wood and/or resources. Fortunately, the Evil God's Temple could collect resources and convert them into data. Otherwise, they wouldn't even be able to store them. Guan Hongchen, on the other hand, recommended many candidates to Ji Yunan under the stimulation of clearing the game. Guan Hongchen was different from an organizer like Red Tail. As a pure agent, her circle was naturally mainly made up of agents. She had many more people in her pocket than Red Tail. Ji Yunan took action personally. After a few rounds of trouble, he slaughtered 2 families and eliminated a few weaker ones. In the end, he chose a father and son pair to add to his list of god messengers. After gathering the 4 people to farm Splendid World, Red Tail also decided to build the White Fog. They needed Ji Yunan's help to deal with the small plane with a different time flow. Just as the God Kingdom construction was progressing and everything was on the right track, a figure arrived at the edge of the heavenly world. Chapter 260. The so-called outer space aliens did not really live in an alternate dimension. Outside the sky, there were many planes, but they belonged to another plane cluster. 4 break world people. Traveling between planes was an easy task. There were many people who wanted to explore the outer worlds. They went to the outer worlds themselves. Qian Han was one of those people. Although he was the manager of Red Palace, Red was not in Star for half a year. He had a lot of time to travel. It was under such circumstances that he discovered the Golden Giant tribe's territory. Mr. Jin Wuyin, this is the video of Ji Yunan's transformation. Qian Han stood in front of a tall, gold man and spoke with respect. He had to be respectful because he knew the man in front of him was not just the leader of the Gold Giant. He was the real planet leader. The Gold Giants had been in outer space for tens of thousands of years. If it were not for the planet leader, they would have been conquered by other powerful factions. The Gold Giants were born with God power, and their bodies were indestructible. They had strong rule resistance. It was not an exaggeration to say they were a race that heaven and earth loved. But the more talented a race was, the harder it was for them to maintain their independence. Their very existence was enough to attract many greedy eyes. Qian Han carefully looked at the man. With his identity, he did not expect to see this man. But now, because of Mr. Jin, he was stopped by this man. If he could, Qian Han did not want to meet this leader like this. From the video, it does look like him. Even the leader of the Gold Giant said the same thing. But the video does not have his presence. That is the most telling. When Ji Yunan became Sky God, everything around him that was related to rules was suppressed. The video Qian Han was holding was made with technology, so it did not have a presence. Qian Han had a wry smile as he explained. He tried to describe how strong Ji Yunan was, but he did not know where to start. Every time he thought of that scene, he could only think of one word to describe it: Sky God. Jin Wuyin slowly stood up and quietly said, "No matter who it is, if he kills my people, he must pay the price." "Where is this person?" I do not know," Qian Han said honestly. Who knew which plane the World Breaker would be in? However, clan leader Jin Wuyin was obviously not a reasonable person. He picked up Qian Han, stared at him coldly, and said, "If you can't find any trace of him in 3 months, I will kill you." Of course, Ji Yunan didn't know that someone was going to pay for his life. He was bringing Red Tail to a small plane called Crescent World. The Crescent World was a small plane that had only been discovered in recent years. Due to the lack of resources, not many people were interested in this place. However, it was located in a relatively remote location within the heavens, and the time flow was very slow. Compared to the heaven and world realms, it was a plane that was extremely suitable for training talents and harvesting at fixed points. The human civilization in the moon world is still in the feudal era, but the level of power is not low. It is the most suitable place to cultivate the children of Providence. Red Tail explained the benefits of the moon world. The crescent world rarely communicated with the outside world. It was basically a small, closed world. The power system was quite good. There were almost break-world beings. It was a sealed small world, but the martial system was not bad. There were almost break-world beings. At first, prenatal and innate were the same. After innate, it was Sky Chi and Sky Spirit. Sky Chi warriors can fly, so they are the same as super beings. When Sky Spirit reaches the peak, they can break through space. That should be the description of World Breaker. Red Tail had done her homework. She had a deep understanding of Crescent World. If she was given a bit more space, she might even have an organization. Let's find a Sky Spirit warrior first and see how much power they have, Ji Nan said with interest. He was not as busy as a normal planet master. Rebuilding the White Mist was one of the most important steps of building a god kingdom. Everything was difficult at the beginning, so Ji Nan did not mind doing the first step himself. If he could successfully take down Crescent World and use the power here to conquer other planes, it would be much easier. Crescent World only had one land shaped like a crescent moon. Now, the royal family was weak, and many people were rising. The students of all the big sects came out to build a foundation. Ji Nan and Red Tail's first stop was Daexing Mountain. There were 2 of the 8 big sects there. It was a holy land of martial arts. Ming Chan Temple and Zhongli Sword Party. Ji Nan walked in the mountains and read the names of the 2 sects. One was a sword sect, and the other was a Buddhist sect. They were the top sects in Crescent World, and they had Sky Spirit warriors. Let's go to Zhongli Sword Party first. The mountain wind blew on his face. Ji Nan did not hesitate. He quickly made a decision. Most of the Buddhist skills had their own magic, so it was not good to observe them. In comparison, swordsmen were a bit better. Daexing Mountain was not big, but Zhongli Sword Party took up a lot of space. Even the villages at the foot of the mountain belonged to them. If a normal visitor wanted to visit, they would have to start from the guest pavilion at the foot of the mountain. They would have to visit step by step. That was the only way to show off the status of the 8 big sects. Ji Nan was there to cause trouble, so he did not care that much. He brought Red Tail with him and descended from the sky. He stopped and looked at the sky in front of him. That was the most iconic building of the Zhongli Sword Party. It was the Sky Sword Tower. Red Tail noticed what Ji Nan was doing and said, "The Sky Spirit people here do not have the power to break the world. The chances of them staying in the sect are high." "True." Ji Nan laughed. "Their bodies are not here, but they can come back at any time." Red Tail was shocked. He looked at the giant sword-shaped Sky Sword Tower and seemed to understand something. In the next moment, the 2 of them disappeared. They reappeared in the main hall. There was a group of people standing there. They were holding a fight. When Ji Nan and Red Tail appeared, a young man was using his sword to knock away his opponent's long sword. He smiled as if he had won. "Brother Yang, you still need to practice your piercing cloud sword skill." The young man swung his sword and looked at his opponent. He was going to enjoy Brother Yang's defeat. He was going to look sad and unwilling, but he noticed Brother Yang was looking at him with fear. The young man seemed to have understood something. He suddenly turned his head to look behind him, only to see a man and a woman standing there quietly. Who are you?" the young man blurted out. Before he could finish speaking, he felt his vision start to float up. His face was in pain. His whole body was sent flying. In the eyes of others, it was clear that his opponent had coldly looked at him, but the young man had been sent flying. "Who is the leader?" came the calm voice from the man's mouth. An old man with an old face but shrewdness in his eyes slowly stood up and looked at the other party solemnly. "The Zhongli Sword Party is now one of the 8 big sects in the world. We have the protection of the God-connecting elder." The old man immediately brought up his background. "You have come to bully my student. Are you going to make an enemy out of our leader?" The old man's voice echoed through the hall. He could tell the man's power was unpredictable, so he did not say anything. He knew only the leader could suppress him. Surprisingly, the man's face was still emotionless. He only said one word. Chapter 261. The scene was quiet and awkward. Even the old man, who was the leader of the Zhongli sword faction, did not expect him to give such an answer. He wanted to say something more, but he saw him tap his finger. A giant black sword appeared out of thin air. It came down from above everyone's heads. The old man felt a strong wind coming toward him. He felt a chill on his back. He quickly looked back and saw that the sky sword tower behind him had been hit. In the next moment, the sword pagoda that was originally towering into the clouds actually broke diagonally from the middle. This. The old man's face was pale. He quickly shouted, "Quick! Form the formation to welcome the elder." As soon as he finished speaking, 3 people immediately jumped down and quickly stood behind him. The 3 of them were not young. They all had white hair, but they were full of energy. The 4 of them each held a long sword. They were gold, silver, purple, and blue. They stood in a square, pointing to the sky. Zhong, Li, Qian, block. With 4 shouts, 4 colors of light shot into the sky. It set off a scary power. It made the disciples around feel excited. They had been bullied, and they were angry. They were not strong enough, so they could only watch the strong enemy show off. But the actions of their leader and the 3 elders made them excited. Yes, we still have the elder, the legendary martial path god, the invincible elder. Suddenly, some people began to thank Ji Yunan and Red Tail. Thanks to these 2 guys, they could see the elder's power. "It's a welcoming spell formation," Red Tail commented. Red Tail commented from the side. "Divide the Dharma artifact into 4 and let the 4 transcendents operate it separately. That way, they can gather enough power to guide us." With Ji Yunan's knowledge, he knew what a welcoming spell formation was. The astral realm also had something similar, but that was for the Tao Lords. They could not break the world, so they used this method to go around in circles to travel through space. As for the real-world breakers, they could manipulate space at will. They did not have to use this method. Through the scene in front of them, Ji Yunan and Red Tail could tell that the martial path god of the Crescent World did not have the basic characteristics of a world breaker. Maybe it is something between a super and a break world. I'd still like to see an actual example. Ji Yunan's gaze didn't waver at all as he looked up calmly. There, the 4-colored light had completely converged into a single point, and a door of light had opened in the sky. A figure with a sword at his waist had impressively appeared. Zhongli Sword Faction's 398th generation unfilial disciple, Du Xian, respectfully welcomes the Patriarch's arrival. Among the 4 old men, the faction leader said in a clear voice. A commotion broke out among the crowd of disciples. "Patriarch! It really is the ancestral master. I've seen the portrait of the Patriarch." The silhouette in the air lightly stepped forward and suddenly appeared in front of the people of the Zhongli sword sect, directly facing Ji Yunan and Yi Shiwen. This ancestor of the Zhongli sword sect had an extraordinary appearance. He clearly had the face of a young man, dressed in a snow-white robe, with a long sword hanging from his waist in a silver scabbard, simple yet elegant. More importantly, being at the pinnacle of the world all year round made his temperament extraordinary and refined. His entire person simply didn't look like a mortal. Therefore, the moment this ancestral master appeared on the stage, countless screams were heard. Zhongli Su Wen. The Patriarch held his sword and cupped his hands. He said his name and then said, "Mister, your reaction is too slow." The calm 4-word evaluation came from behind. It made Su Wen's words stick in his chest, and he subconsciously wanted to draw his sword. But his opponent's actions were faster than he expected. He was a swordsman, but he couldn't even draw his sword. His elbow joint felt a sharp pain. Catcher. Su Wen's right hand was grabbed, and his left hand was broken. It formed a 90-degree bend. It was very scary to look at. His fitness is close to break world class. Ji Yunan continued to evaluate and then pushed Su Wen forward. Su Wen did not know what was going on, but he had relied on himself. He had killed his way to this level, so his will was very strong. Seeing the bindings around him disappear, he did not have time to think. He used his uninjured right hand to draw his sword. In the time it took for a spark to fly, he stabbed Ji Yunan's throat. "Your damage is much stronger than that of a normal leader, but you are not as strong as a breakworld class. Speed barely passes. Su Wen did not have time to feel happy. He noticed that his opponent's voice was still calm. The sword that he stabbed his opponent only left a shallow white mark on his skin. It did not even break his skin. This. Su Wen's current mood could only be described as King Dog. As for Ji Yunan's evaluation, it naturally entered into his ears, and the only sentence that could be considered to be a good evaluation was that his speed barely meets the standard. What did he mean by barely passed? There were less than 10 people in the world who had reached the imminent deity realm, and among them, his speed was his forte. But then he thought about what the person in front of him had just shown. The supernatural speed that ghosts and gods could not predict, and he did not think it was strange. Such a scary warrior. Was he the legendary break space level? Ji Yunan casually knocked away the long sword. He looked at Red Tail and asked, "How is it?" Red Tail was recording something with her head down. She shook her head and sighed. Martial Path Sky God is higher than the leader. He is not weaker than a breakworld class. According to my evaluation, if there are more than 4 of these people, a normal breakworld class will have to avoid them. She finally made this evaluation. Ji Yunan's continuous evaluation of Su Wen earlier was, of course, not because he had nothing better to do. He was providing accurate information to Red Tail to determine the true combat strength of illuminating martial arts. If Ji Yunan did this himself, he would not be able to do it well. He did not know how to evaluate. They were all at the level of one punch. In that case, let's clear them all. Ji Yunan nodded. Let Lan Sai do it. There were 8 big sects here, which meant there were at least 8 Sky God Martial Path. Normal break world people could not deal with them. They had to clear them all before they could rebuild the white mist. Yes. Red Tail was not surprised. She already knew how scary Lan Sai was after leveling up. That strange power was something that even the top break world people could be affected by. Ji Yunan and Red Tail talked as if there was no one else around. The disciples of the Zhongli Sword School, including the leader and the other 3, looked pale. That was because their leader, Su Wen, was holding a sword with a serious face. He was looking forward. As for his left hand, it was still in that terrifying state of being bent upside down. Chapter 262. Su Wen was indeed a smart man, or rather, no one who could stand at the top of the world would be an idiot. Su Wen just happened to have this opportunity. Faced with someone who was far stronger than him and was probably at the legendary level, Su Wen chose to side with him without any hesitation. Although speaking in front of so many people was enough to destroy his image as an ancestor, Su Wen looked young, but he was actually an old monster who had lived for hundreds of years. Why would he care about that? Protecting his own life and planning for the position and power of his sect was what he had to consider. Su Wen's guess was right. If he hadn't said that, Ji Yunan would have already destroyed the Zhongli sword sect and returned to the Holy Kingdom to ask Lan Sai to come over. Now that Su Wen expressed his intention to side with him, he indeed saved his sect. To rebuild the white fog in a small world with a slower flow of time, he had to borrow the power of the local natives. Apart from realm breakers, reincarnation was the only way to enter a small world of the world level. Although a Star Lord like Ji Yunan could bring people in, the number was obviously not enough to establish an organization. Therefore, Ji Yunan looked around and finally nodded. Okay. In the Holy Kingdom, Ji Yunan had already returned to the evil god's temple, while Lan Sai temporarily stopped the dungeon raid and went to the Crescent World to help Red Tail establish an organization. It was indeed a waste for her to join the dungeon with her current level 4 strength. After all, the Splendid World was only a low-level dungeon, and the highest level unlocked was only level 3. It didn't matter how strong she was. With 3 professional agents, the speed of clearing the dungeon was much faster. There were almost no obstacles in the first stage, and they quickly passed it. On the contrary, the later stages of the battle left the 3 of them stuck. Seeing Ji Yunan appear, a father and son who happened to come out of the dungeon hurriedly bowed and said, "Sir." The father and son were called Leichi and Labor. They didn't sound like father and son, but more like brothers. However, they were indeed father and son. Lei 7 looked like a middle-aged man with a worried look on his face, while Lei 8 looked like a little boy in his teens with a similar build to Shadow Song. He was rather reserved when he bowed to Ji Yunan. But it is such a child, the level of doing the task completely crushes a rookie like Lan Sai. While talent was a part of it, Labor's true age far surpassed Lan Sai's. Leichi and Labor were not humans, but elemental beings. They were thunderstorm elementals, the elemental creatures that accompanied the Thunder Titans. When their strength reached the transcendent realm, they could already transform into human form. Ji Yunan nodded lightly in response to the father and son's greetings. The evil god's palace was still very quiet. Next, it was Yang Xiaoxiao who came to see Ji Yunan. Ever since the immortal demon world was taken by Ji Yunan as a divine kingdom, the newly born source quickly stabilized, and the divine kingdom's space no longer collapsed as often as before. Thus, the work of establishing the divine kingdom was once again carried out by Yang Xiaoxiao. When the natural disaster happened before, many people lost the chance to escape due to the city-state's restrictions. Yang Xiaoxiao stood next to Ji Yunan and said, "Now that we're re-implementing the city-state system, there's a lot of resistance." Human nature determined that while society maintained a certain degree of centralization, it would definitely spread and radiate to the surroundings, be it in terms of population or industry. Therefore, a completely closed city-state system essentially went against the laws of nature. It had only been implemented because of Ji Yunan's forceful pressure. "It's all right. Just do your best. There's no need to force too much." Ji Yunan seemed especially easy to talk to this time. He actually did not take any forceful measures. Even Yang Xiaoxiao was rather surprised. From what she remembered, her teacher had always chosen to go on a killing spree when faced with such a situation. After killing half of those who were dissatisfied, the rest would naturally submit. Ji Yunan smiled and said nothing more. Of course, he was not being kind. His divine power was one thing, but the real reason was that the divine kingdom had been established, and he would soon be able to obtain buildings to manage the people. Back then, he had set up a series of measures and even used the law of resurrection to manage the divine kingdom. That was because it was only level 4 back then. After reaching level 5, players essentially had to play the game of management. How could they possibly go and communicate with the people personally? As long as they had this, the city-state system did not need anyone to manage it at all. It could be done with a flick of a finger. With the shadow servants, resources were continuously transported to the evil god's temple. The resources needed by the market were already sufficient. It was not impossible to gather a second one. That's why everything depends on the accumulated points. The construction of the divine kingdom was being perfected step by step. Resources were constantly arriving. The splendid world dungeon was also gradually conquered. The crescent world had completely fallen into Ji Yunan's hands, and a brand new white mist had been established. In the blink of an eye, another half a year had passed. As the splendid world was cleared again, the points in the evil god's temple jumped to 10,000 again. Another 10,000. Let's follow the previous plan and choose the regional management platform as the second building. Ji Yunan did not hesitate much and quickly made a decision. This was already his second 10,000 points. The resource market had long been established, and all kinds of basic resources had been interconnected. Choose target building, regional management platform. Requirements: 10,000 points, 500 units of wood, 400 units. As a long list was written on the evil god's temple, a large number of resources were deducted. An exquisite stone platform the size of a podium slowly appeared and was placed in front of Ji Yunan. "Sir, what's this?" Lan Sai had also witnessed this scene. This was not the first time she had seen a miracle, so she was not as surprised. "You'll know once you take a look outside." With the completion of the second building, Ji Yunan was in a good mood and smiled faintly. He then ignored Lan Sai and went to the regional management platform. The platform's surface was made of stone, but at this moment, it revealed a bright screen. It was like a top-notch high-tech product. On the screen was a map that could be zoomed in. It was the topographic map of the Divine Kingdom. It was also a Level 0 regional management platform. It was unable to change the terrain, but it only had one function, and it was enough for Ji Yunan to use now. Gu Nan randomly found the location of a city and then drew a circle on the screen, enclosing the city. A blood-red seal character appeared faintly around the circle. Lan Sai was not in a hurry to go out. She was following behind Gu Nan and naturally saw this scene. She vaguely understood what Gu Nan meant, yet a feeling of absurdity couldn't help but surge out from her heart. She hurriedly flashed and tore open the space before her figure directly appeared above the city. Lan Sai saw a scene that made her gasp in surprise. The golden light was like a cover, wrapping up the entire city and hovering quietly in the air along with a large area of the ground below. Chapter 263. AD on the title begins. AD on the title Eng 1 Chapter 303 Life and Death Stone H1 A Style equals Color. #00F, Ref equals 562-2979. HTML Next chapter Atablija border equals 0 Tartable border equals 0 Align equals left Tartable border equals 0 Align equals left Tartable border equals 0 Align equals left TRTDTR Table. The upheaval in the Divine Kingdom was still ongoing. One city after another was shrouded in golden light, like a giant golden egg being wrapped. The people in the city could not leave, and the people outside the city could not enter. Countless people stared at this scene, dumbfounded. Many people left the city and went to the wilderness, trying to find some resources that the city did not have, or to breathe fresh air, but in the end, they were separated forever. Lan Sai silently returned to the evil god's palace, while Yang Xiaoxiao was already busy dealing with the situation. Gu Nan's sudden actions had brought her a lot of trouble. On the management platform, there were already 50 golden eggs in the east and west, looking spectacular. After an unknown amount of time, Yang Xiaoxiao walked back with a tired face. She had also become Gu Nan's oracle, and due to her special relationship with the Divine Kingdom, she could be considered as half the owner of this place, and had considerable privileges in management. Only Yang Xiaoxiao could manage such a huge Divine Kingdom in an orderly manner. But this time, even she was unable to do so. Teacher, close to 1/10 of the gods are in the wilderness, and most of them are warriors. Yang Xiaoxiao said, should we give them a chance? What chance? It's not like they can't survive in the wilderness. Gu Nan said indifferently, in the future, you have to slowly get used to using the Divine Kingdom's buildings to manage, and reduce contact with the gods. In the game in his previous life, the gods were just a bunch of numbers in the eyes of the players, and no one would be bored enough to talk to the gods. On the other hand, a butler like Yang Xiaoxiao would exist in every god kingdom. The enthusiasm of the players was short-lived, and it was unrealistic for the players to persevere in managing the Divine Kingdom. Therefore, a full-time butler was necessary. This was the significance of the oracles. Some of them were good at fighting, some were good at clearing dungeons, and some were good at management. Therefore, Gu Nan shifted his gaze to his building list. The third building that he was preparing to build was the Embassy of God. The Oracle Consulate was a building specially prepared for the oracles. Not only could it quickly heal the oracles' injuries, but it could also train their various abilities. At a high level, the oracle could even resurrect dead oracles. In the God Kingdom, the two buildings that could improve the strength of the gods and strengthen the combat power of the God Kingdom were the God Training Camp and the God Servant House. However, the evil god's temple was still level 0. Even if he took out the god's servants, it wouldn't be of much use. It would be better to build the god's embassy first. Only by strengthening the oracle's power could he better earn points for Gu Nan. The progress in the Crescent World was very fast. Half a year had passed in the God Kingdom, and only half a month had passed in the main world. However, 3 years had passed in the Crescent World. With Lan Sai's help to clean up the martial gods, and the Zhongli Sword sect taking the initiative to seek refuge, the reconstruction of the White Mist went very smoothly with the help of the local tyrant. In just 3 years, the martial gods in the Crescent World were basically wiped out, and they were only waiting for the Red Tail to unify. Gu Nan was in charge of the Divine Kingdom, so he didn't miss out on any of this information. However, when his gaze fell on the Oracle Consulate, he couldn't help but be slightly stunned. In the first column of the list of requirements, there was a bracket after 10,000 points. The words in the bracket were 10 units of life and death stone. Gu Nan had seen this scene many times. This was a random event during the construction of a building. Certain special materials could be used to replace points for the construction. Of course, the management of the God Kingdom wasn't all monotonous and boring. There were all kinds of random events that existed to enrich the playstyle of the players. In the early days of the God Kingdom, things like material swapping were very popular among the players. That was because everyone was short of points, so they wanted to trade. Life and Death Stone? Ji Nan said the unfamiliar name and frowned. With his knowledge, he was already familiar with most of the common materials. At least, there were few materials in the star world that he didn't know about. Ji Nan thought for a while, but he couldn't remember anything about the Life and Death Stone. He asked the Red Tail, Guan Hongchen, and the others, but they couldn't find any clues. It really isn't something from the star world? Ji Nan shook his head and took a step forward before his figure vanished from the evil god's palace. Purple Civ Sky. Ever since Ji Nan leveled up to level 5, he hadn't been there. Now, because of a Life and Death Stone, which he didn't know, he was back on this land. He was still in the Star World's door area. There was still a maid that Ji Nan was familiar with, but he didn't know her name. At the Break World level and above, there was a big gap between a cultivator and a normal person. They were like two different species. That was especially obvious when it came to their lifespans. For example, the maids that Ji Nan hired could only live for 100 or 200 years. They might not even be able to serve him for 50 years. Perhaps when Ji Nan went into seclusion, all he would see when he returned would be a pile of bones. Ji Nan quickly left. He went to the Star World's door hall. He wanted to find out more about the Life and Death Stone. When he left, he bumped into his old neighbor, Luo Wen. "Huh, Mr. Ji Nan? Long time no see." Luo Wen was happy to greet Ji Nan, even though it hadn't been long for a break-world person like him. Ji Nan nodded. After chatting with him for a bit, he asked about the Life and Death Stone. Life and Death Stone? That is a special product of Quiet Sky. Luo Wen was very knowledgeable, so he immediately said. While Luo Wen was explaining, Ji Nan slowly learned what the Life and Death Stone was. It was a crystal that was born with the law of life and death. Even in the Devata realms, it was a rare resource. The solitary destructive heaven was the only place that had a fixed supply of it. Perhaps other small planes produced it, but when they found out, they would be kept a secret. They would not announce it. Quiet Sky. Ji Nan touched his chin. He felt it was funny. If he remembered correctly, Quiet Sky was Zuozwa's star world. He didn't expect that after going around in a big circle, he would still be involved in this matter. This time, there was no way someone had planned it. It was just a coincidence. The God Kingdom's construction required resources. It was not something that outsiders could control. Ji Nan, do you need the Life and Death Stone? Luo Wen easily guessed Ji Nan's needs. He said, it is difficult to buy it with spirit stones. Recently, someone organized an invasion of Quiet Sky. Why don't you go and try your luck? He paused and said, do you remember the 7-Star Alliance who came to check last time? Their missions are quite reliable. They have the Star World's door as a guarantee. They don't have to worry about being attacked. Ji Nan nodded, indicating that he would consider his suggestion. He asked, what is the invasion of Quiet Sky? Chapter 264. Add-on the title began. Add-on the title ended 1 text chapter 304 7-Star Alliance H1A style equals color, #00F. Ref equals iml next chapter atablilage border equals 0 tiartable border equals 0 align equals left tiartable border equals 0 align equals left tiartable border equals 0 align equals left trtdtr table. Luo Wen's words surprised Ji Nan, but he quickly regained his composure. For world breakers, their sights were no longer limited to one world or one place. They were looking at the entire world, especially elites like Luo Wen, who were in Purple Civ Sky. The news of Zuozwa invading Astral World could be hidden from others at first, but as time went on, the news would leak. No matter if it was his subordinates' movements or Astral World's arrangements, they would be discovered sooner or later. Not to mention that Red didn't intend to hide this matter at all. As long as it was hidden from the public at first, as time dragged on, the targets of those who wanted to take advantage of the situation would change. Since the two sides were in a stalemate, of course, Silent Destruction Sky was more attractive. Astral World was a big plane, but compared to Silent Destruction Sky, one of the strongest under the 13 skies, there was still a gap. Purple Civ Sky, 7-Star Alliance's base. Please wait a moment. The organization will send someone to review your application. A girl led Gu Nan into the hall and bowed respectfully. Gu Nan nodded and said nothing. He had already arrived at 7-Star Alliance and applied to join the operation against Silent Destruction Sky. Borrowing the organization's power was necessary. For a super big plane like Silent Destruction Sky, if Gu Nan went looking for the Life and Death Stone himself, he might not even find it in a year. If 7-Star Alliance could first determine the location of the Life and Death Stone, it would be much easier to snatch it. The so-called review was an internal assessment of 7-Star Alliance. They were going to invade a sky great world, so they had to be careful when choosing their team members. Gu Nan sat for a while, but the people from the 7-Star Alliance had yet to arrive. Instead, the girl brought another person in. He was a shy-looking big boy. He probably had the same purpose as Gu Nan for coming here at this time. The girl who led the way quickly left, leaving only Gu Nan and the boy in the hall. The boy didn't seem to be used to such an atmosphere, so he couldn't help but take the initiative to greet Gu Nan. "Hello, my name is Lu Wenying," the boy stood up and said nervously. Gu Nan raised his head and looked at the boy with a feminine name. He nodded and said, "Gu Nan." Lu Wenying seemed to relax a little and said with a smile, "Is Sire Gu Nan also here for Silent Destroyer Sky? Maybe we can become teammates." He still looked like a kid, but Gu Nan didn't think it was strange. If he grew up in a place like Purple Sky, it was not impossible for him to have a Breakworld elite. The two of them did not have a chance to talk because a man and a woman were quickly approaching. They were wearing the uniforms of 7-Star Alliance. The two of them quickly came before Gu Nan and Lu Wenying. The woman was the first to speak. No, I just got here. No, I just got here." Lu Wenying quickly waved his hand. He suddenly revealed his childishness. The woman did not mind. She first introduced her name and briefly introduced her team's situation. The woman's name was Jiang Tingwei, and the person next to her was her little brother, Jiang Zheng. Aside from the two of them, there was another permanent member of the team. To enter a big world as a team, the best number of people was 3 to 5. Due to Silent Destroyer Sky's reputation, they hoped to recruit 1 or 2 temporary members. "I need to test your power. This is my responsibility to the other members of the team. Please forgive me." Jiang Tingwei had a standard smile on her face. She did not look friendly, but she did not look disgusted. Lu Wenying nodded. "Of course. Is this the place?" Jiang Tingwei was about to nod, but there was a commotion outside. 2 people rushed in. The woman who had been leading the way was behind them in a panic. "Mr. Shu, you cannot go in." "Mr. Shu. Shu Yang." Jiang Tingwei frowned and looked over. She knew this person, but they did not talk much. She did not expect to see him there that day. Jiang Tingwei gestured for the girl to step back. Shu Yang excused himself and said, "Big sis Jiang, I've brought you a good teammate today." As he spoke, he patted the man in black next to him. "My brother, you can call him Black Hawk. He is not weak. This time, our team is not interested in Silent Destroyer Sky. You guys are lucky." Jiang Tingwei's team wanted to go to Silent Destroyer Sky. That was no secret in 7-Star Alliance. First come, first served. Jiang Tingwei frowned. She pointed at Gu Nan and said calmly, "We only need 2 people. If they are not qualified, then we will consider your friend." Shu Yang knew that Jiang Tingwei was a principled person, so he did not mind. Instead, he turned to look at Gu Nan and Lu Wenying. 3 people, 2 spots. As long as he squeezed one out of the 2, it would be fine. The man called Black Hawk was expressionless. However, his gaze clearly fell on Lu Wenying. Shu Yang immediately understood. Gu Nan was dressed in ordinary clothes. There was not the slightest fluctuation of aura around him. However, how could he be an ordinary person if he could stand here? One look and it was obvious that he would not be easy to deal with. In comparison, Lu Weiniang, who was still immature, was a more suitable target. Xu Yang laughed and said, "We cultivators have to rely on our strength to speak. Why don't Black Hawk and this little brother have a spar?" His words were naturally directed at Lu Weiniang. The latter did not even think about it. He immediately said, "Okay." Lu Weiniang's decisive reply stunned Xu Yang, making him a little unsure of what to do next. Immature just meant that the other party was inexperienced. It did not mean that he was weak. Perhaps he was a disciple of a powerful faction that had just left the mountain to train. "Let's do it then." At this moment, Black Hawk spoke up. Seeing that Black Hawk had spoken, Xu Yang naturally did not object. He looked at Jiang Tingwei and said, "Hey, they agreed to the spar. Big sis Jiang won't interfere, right?" Jiang Tingwei still had a frown on her face. She hoped that Lu Weiniang would not interfere. However, this was the other party's choice. She could only nod her head. Thus, the crowd retreated a little, leaving space for the black figure and Lu Weiniang. It was just a simple spar. It was not a life and death battle, so they were not afraid of causing too much of a commotion. Before the spar began, Xu Yang's expression changed slightly. He seemed to have received some information. He walked to Black Hawk's side. "My men have found some information." He whispered to Black Hawk, "This person is called Lu Weiniang. There's no information on him. He might be a disciple of a powerful faction. For people like them, the absence of information was also a form of information. It could explain many things." Black Hawk nodded silently. "What about the other one?" "His name is Ji Nan. He lives in the public area. He should be from a small dimension." Xu Yang said quickly, "If things go south, we'll change our target and challenge him." Chapter 265. Inside the Seven-Star Alliance's base, the Black Hawk looked at his opponent calmly. This big boy was eager to fight. It was exactly what the two of them had guessed. Some big faction secretly trained him. He had break world power, but he rarely participated in the world. That had to be it. Xu Yang, who was watching from the side, thought his guess was correct. He suddenly said, "Wait." This shout came out of nowhere. Lu Weiniang was already prepared to make a move, but he was stopped by Xu Yang's shout. He immediately glared at Xu Yang. It felt like he was about to sing karaoke when someone cut him off. Xu Yang could not say anything to the Black Hawk, and he could not admit defeat. He had to use his own way to show his attitude. He had to set the stage. Xu Yang walked in front of Ji Yunan and said, "If that little brother accepted the challenge, then for fairness' sake, you have no reason to stay out of it. It does not matter if that little brother wins or if my friend is better, the loser should have a chance to challenge you." Xu Yang's eyes looked at Ji Yunan. It was as if he said no, everyone would be angry. Xu Yang's words were very clever. He did not know who would lose, so it looked like he was speaking for both of them. It made him seem like he was being fair. When Lu Weiniang heard this, he thought it made sense. He did not mind fighting, but there was no reason for a third person to take advantage of him. Noticing Lu Weiniang's gaze, Xu Yang felt a lot more at ease. As long as Lu Weiniang acknowledged his words, then his preparations would be considered a success. No matter what Ji Yunan's attitude was, he could not deny it. However, the other party's reaction was somewhat out of his expectations. Ji Yunan frowned. He looked at Jiang Tingwei and asked, "You guys only need 2 people?" Jiang Tingwei acted as if she did not see the fighting in front of her. She calmly nodded and said, "Not bad. Our team only has 2 empty spots." "Okay," Ji Yunan agreed. In front of Xu Yang's shocked eyes, his body suddenly disappeared. The next moment, he had already appeared behind the Black Hawk, grabbed the latter's hair, and fiercely pressed the latter's head to the ground. How fast was Ji Yunan? When he was level 4, Ji Yunan was able to use his body to crush break world people. Now that he was level 5, he was able to do the same thing. Black Hawk was a world breaker, but he felt his vision blur. His head started to fall. He was going to touch the ground. Bang! An incomparably horrifying muffled sound rang out. Ji Nan clapped his hands and turned around to leave. Fresh blood flowed continuously from the ground, while the Black Hawk lay limply on the ground, motionless. There are only two of us now, Ji Nan said to Jiang Tingwei. Let's go. I'm in a hurry. Everything happened too quickly. Xu Yang had only just recovered from the shock, and his eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. The Black Eagle was actually defeated in one blow. Xu Yang looked at Ji Nan as if he was a monster, but he did not dare say a word. He quickly ran over to the Black Hawk to check on his wounds. Lu Weining was shocked, too. His eyes kept moving between Ji Nan and the Black Hawk. He was shocked by Ji Nan's brutality. Even Jiang Tingwei, who was always calm, could not help but look at Ji Nan with a weird expression. After a while, she said, "Please come with me." He had even forgotten about the test he was supposed to do. Clearly, this 7-star Alliance elite was not in a calm mood. Ji Nan and Lu Weining followed the Jiang siblings. They quickly reached the inner hall. There was already a girl waiting there. When she saw the four of them, she started to scream, "Big sister boss! Big sister boss!" The girl jumped up. She looked at Ji Nan and said, "Are they our new teammates?" "Hello, I'm Sichu Jing. Nice to meet you." The last sentence was directed at Ji Nan and Jiang Tingwei. This girl named Sichu Jing was not introverted at all. "Hi, hello, I'm Lu Weining." Lu Weining was obviously more shy in front of the girl. Ji Nan nodded and signed up. He then looked at Jiang Tingwei and asked, "When do we leave?" "If you two have no problems, you can leave immediately. The two from the astral world might change at any time," Jiang Tingwei said solemnly. "I've understood your needs and found a location." The astral world had been in a stalemate for too long. No one knew when there would be a change. A change in the minds of those two big shots could bring them the difference between life and death. "I'm fine with it." Lu Weining immediately expressed his position, and his eager expression reappeared. Of course, Ji Nan would not have any problems. After sharing the coordinates, the five of them immediately set off for the destructive sky. So, this is the destructive sky. Sichu Jing did not expose the cleverness of the Breakworld elites. She looked up at the sky with interest. It is just like what is written in the books. The biggest feature of the destructive sky was that the sky there was always black and white. Half of it was day, and the other half was night. It was very clear, and there was no gradual change. Every once in a while, the black and white would change, but it was also a sudden change. There was no middle. When Ji Nan saw this weird scene, he knew this was Zuozhuo's astral world. The sky was split in half. Was it not like Zuozhuo herself? The destructive sky is divided into 16 areas. We are in the Clear Valley area. The ancient square castle in front of us is our target. Jiang Tingwei told everyone about the enemy. The ancient square castle was their target. There were items that each of the three parties needed. Ji Nan wanted the life and death stone. Lu Weining needed a special spring water called the Dead Spring. Jiang Tingwei's team of 3 wanted the head of a Breakworld elite. Jiang Tingwei did not just pick people randomly. She took care of the needs of all 3 parties. She made sure everyone was focused on one thing. She did not want to fight before the fight started. When Ji Nan and Sichu Jing were waiting, she was confirming all the information. There are 4 Breakworld elites guarding the ancient square castle, and there is a protection by Sema. Jiang Tingwei looked serious. She quietly said, "To take care of the needs of all 3 parties, the strategy is, I am going to break the by Sema." Ji Nan interrupted her. "When the 4 Breakworld elites come out, you guys can sneak attack the target." Jiang Tingwei took a deep breath. According to what he said, there was no problem. If they could not kill the target with a sneak attack, the operation would be a joke. But Sichu Jing was straightforward. He blurted out, "This is a Breakworld class protection by Sema. If we cannot break it, we will be alerting the enemy." Chapter 266. In the area where Gufeng Castle was located, it was daytime in the silent sky. But in this broad daylight, a shadow suddenly appeared in the sky. Of course, it immediately alerted the guards in the castle. Who is it? A shout came from below. It was not polite to Ji Yunan. A guy who showed up like this did not look like a good guy. And Ji Yunan was not here to be a good guy. He rapidly descended, and then suddenly stopped at a certain moment. There was a thin barrier in front of him. Not far away, Sichu Jing did not know what was happening. He did not understand what Ji Yunan was doing. Jiang Tingwei was staring at Ji Yunan's movements. Lu Weining was doing the same thing. Jiang Zheng, who had not said a word, suddenly said, "His judgment of the Bai Sema's location is very accurate. He is not a cultivator who only practices his body. The protective Bai Sema was made up of rule power. If it was a pure body cultivator, they would not be able to find the Bai Sema's location. Let's see how strong he is." When Jiang Tingwei faced her little brother, her face looked a bit helpless. "This time, we might be able to take advantage of him." Sichu Jing could hear the hidden meaning in their conversation. When he looked over again, he saw Ji Yunan's fist land on him. There was no loud noise like they had imagined, and there was no shocking power. The Bai Sema, which should have caused them a lot of trouble, was broken. "He really is strong," Lu Weining gasped, but he did not look sad. He looked at Ji Yunan with the desire to fight. Get ready to fight. Jiang Tingwei's mind was still clear. She remembered the goal of the three of them. Sure enough, as soon as the barrier shattered, 4 figures appeared at the same time, surrounding Ji Yunan tightly. "Who are you? What hatred do you have against Gufang Castle?" one of them asked coldly. Clearly, the Bai Sema broke too quickly. They did not even know what was going on. If they knew the Bai Sema was broken by a punch, none of them would have dared show up. After he said that, another Breakworld person's face changed. He clearly felt the space around him being torn apart. 4 shadows were moving at the same time. It wasn't just one enemy, but 5. Jiang Tingwei's team had 2 swords and 1 spear, and Lu Weining had also attacked at the same time. Their target was the target that the other 3 wanted to kill. Lu Weining's weapon was very strange. It was similar to Ji Yunan's shadow sword, a long sword made of golden light. However, the shadow sword was developing in the direction of nomological materialization, while Lu Weining's golden sword had the tendency to become substantial. One could even see extremely realistic metallic patterns on it. The Breakworld person was surrounded by the 4 of them. He was in a desperate situation, but the one who moved the fastest was not the 4 of them. It was Ji Yunan. Almost at the same time the enemy spoke, Ji Yunan grabbed the person next to him. He pulled him in front of him and punched him in the stomach. In front of everyone's shocked eyes, the poor Breakworld person did not even make a sound. His body was pierced. Ji Yunan threw him into the air like he was throwing a dead dog. It wasn't just the enemy. Even Ji Yunan's temporary teammates were shocked by how he killed the Breakworld person like he was killing a chicken. Sichu Jing's long spear was bent a bit. Fortunately, their opponent was surrounded by 4 people. His escape route was completely blocked. Space was locked. He could only fight like a trapped beast. 1 punch killed a Breakworld person who could not react in time. Ji Yunan's expression did not change. With his current power, bullying a Breakworld person was nothing to brag about. He was a Star Lord, even if it was like he did not have an astral world. In the blink of an eye, the Breakworld person who was surrounded by the 4 of them was fatally wounded. The Jiang family sister and brother's swords seemed to be a combination attack. They were able to inflict damage while keeping their opponents where they were. Sichu Jing was the opposite. Her spear was not fast, but it was shockingly sharp. If it hit an enemy, it could inflict a scary wound. Their 3-man team was formed by relying on such a perfect complement. The opponent saw this too. He knew he could not stay. He bit his tongue and spat out some blood. It created a blood mist in front of him. The blood mist wrapped up the Jiang family sister and brother's swords. It created a chance for him to live. It was a chance he had to risk his life for. The person did not have time to think. He quickly tried to escape the encirclement, but he did not expect a gold light to be waiting for him. It was Lu Weining. The golden sword light suddenly descended, bringing with it an incomparably domineering pressure, forcefully suppressing him. The Jiang family sister and brother's swords suddenly changed. They drew a strange pattern. It broke the opponent's protective rule. It created the best way for Sichu Jing to kill. Sichu Jing did not disappoint them. His great spear pierced through the enemy's chest and completely destroyed his internal organs. He could not be any more dead than he was. The four of them felt relieved. They looked to the side and saw another world breaker had fallen. Ji Yunan was holding the last person and asking him what was going on. "Where is the resource warehouse?" Ji Yunan's voice was very calm. It did not sound like he had just killed a few break-world people. The other person coldly grunted. He looked disdainful. "I have only achieved what I have today because of the leader. You want to kill, Pang." Before he finished speaking, Ji Yunan smashed his skull. If he did not want to say anything, it would have been fine. The warehouse would not have run away. They were not the only four break-world people who knew. Another break-world person died at the hands of Ji Yunan. The four people stopped fighting. They looked at him strangely. The absolute power of break-world people had an upper limit. Even if some people were very strong, it was only because they had a special rule. It was like the Shanghai Pavilion leader, Yu Ju, who died at the hands of Ji Yunan. His curse rule was enough to make many elites of the same level feel helpless, but he had a weakness. However, Ji Yunan seemed to have surpassed this limit, and he'd arrived at a completely different level from them. Jiang Tingwei looked at him. She did not think of a scary idea, but it was starting to appear in her heart. Lock down this area to prevent anyone from taking the resources and escaping, Ji Yunan said emotionlessly. Let's go and see if there is a guide. Okay. Jiang Tingwei nodded. She was shocked at how careful Ji Yunan was. She signaled for her brother to go and lock down the area. In the past, when they did things like plundering and looting, they never considered the small fry. Ji Yunan was a veteran of many battles in the game. It was not easy to kill a boss, but the mission item was taken by a monster. He did not know how many times he had encountered such a scenario. Of course, he knew how to guard against that. The situation in Gufang Castle was better than they thought. Clearly, not everyone was so stubborn. They were not afraid of death. They had only just arrived, and people quickly came to join them. It was a person who called himself Wu Jing. He had been a manager in Gufang Castle, so he was familiar with the affairs of the castle. He led Ji Yunan and the others to the resource warehouse. "You seem to do this kind of thing often," Lu Weining asked with curiosity. Wu Jing smiled awkwardly. "There are often wars in this region. The ancient square castle has changed owners a few times over the years. There are more people coming for resources." Facing 5 break-world people, Wu Jing, who was a super cultivator, was not nervous. It looked like he often encountered situations like this. The location of the resource warehouse was hidden, but there was no protection. If the enemy could fight in front of the warehouse, there was no point in protecting it. Wu Jing quickly handed a list to everyone. He took out the 2 mission items, the Dead Spring and the Life and Death Stones. "We will take the extra resources to Purple Civ Sky and split them evenly. If we don't need them, we will exchange them for spirit crystals." Jiang Tingwei distributed the items skillfully. "You guys check what you need." "That's right. This is a high-quality Dead Spring." Lu Weining nodded with satisfaction. Ji Yunan also had a pile of crystal-clear white crystals in front of him, but there was no joy on his face. The evil god temple had told him clearly that only a small portion of the life and death stones were of acceptable quality. Ji Yunan picked out the life and death stones and found that there were at most 5 units. He was still short of half of what he needed. It would not be easy to make up for 10,000 points. Not enough. He shook his head and looked at Jiang Tingwei. "Are there any higher quality life and death stones with more quantity?" "Not enough. Let me find," Jiang Tingwei said. Before she could reply, Wu Jing, who was next to her, said, "Mister, do you need a top-quality life and death stone? There is one in the city. At the end of the month, there will be an auction to sell it for a high price." He saw that Ji Yunan was not satisfied with the resources and was afraid that he would stay and plunder. So, he quickly came up with an idea. "Okay. Find someone to lead the way." Ji Nan nodded. Jiang Tingwei immediately said, "Let's go together. We will use these resources to buy the life and death stone. If it is not enough, we will think of something else." Jiang Tingwei did not like to take advantage of her teammates. She believed that this was a three-way cooperation. Now that both sides had achieved their goals, there was no reason to leave Ji Nan alone. In her opinion, it was a matter of course to take out these resources and use them as funds for the auction. Lu Weining did not have any doubts. He said firmly, "That is how it should be." Chapter 267. After saying, "I am not buying," the four of them were speechless. After Ji Nan got a guide, he did not want to go with them. He took his people and left. After looking at each other, Jiang Tingwei said, "If Ji Nan can deal with this himself, let's go back to Purple Civ Sky." Her brother, Jiang Zheng, and Sichu Jing followed her lead. Only Lu Weining frowned. "But if we leave like this, we will be abandoning our teammates." Seeing that he was in a difficult situation, Jiang Tingwei tried to convince him. "With his power, I don't think we can help him. If we meet an opponent that is difficult to defeat, we might become a burden." Jiang Tingwei used the most important word, power, to convince Lu Weining. The four of them did not stay. They quickly returned to Purple Civ Sky. Things could change in Galaxy. If it was not necessary, they did not want to stay in Still Destruction Sky. Lu Weining left. In Jiang Tingwei's team of three, Sichu Jing, who was a bit more careless, did not think too much. He just left. Only the Jiang brother and sister were left. "Do you think that Ji Nan is?" Jiang Tingwei said with an uncertain tone. In front of her brother, Jiang Tingwei no longer had a square face. She looked worried, which was rare. Very few people knew that although Jiang Tingwei made the decisions for the team, the taciturn Jiang Zheng was the true brains. He can look down on break worlds, but he is not famous. "I am afraid that is the only possibility." Jiang Zheng sighed. "He is a planet master." Hearing the same answer from her brother, Jiang Tingwei was sure of her guess. Then, she sighed. A planet master had walked right in front of them. If he had any bad intentions. Fortunately, it was over. It was just scary thinking about it. On the other side, after Lu Weining left Seven Star Alliance, he went to a remote temple. He asked the sloppy Taoist in front of him, "Master, such a strong guy. Where did he come from?" Lu Weining was a bit naive, but he was not stupid. Now that he thought about it carefully, he could understand that Ji Nan's strength was a bit ridiculous and completely exceeded his expectations. After listening to Lu Weining's narration, the sloppy Taoist, whom he addressed as master, also had a puzzled expression on his face. He stroked his beard hard and said, "Ji Nan? Master, even you have not heard of it. I, your master, am not an immortal. How can I know everyone in the world?" The slovenly Taoist said grumpily, but his heart sank. At his level, he was even more aware that experts would not appear for no reason. The world was only so big, and almighty beings naturally had their roots. A super expert who had appeared out of nowhere. If he wasn't hiding his identity, then there was only one possibility left. "Anyway, just don't provoke him," the Daoist priest said to his disciple solemnly. In the silent destroyer sky, Ji Nan had already arrived at the capital of the Clear Valley region and found a courtyard to stay in. For Break World elites and above, distance did not mean much. They could go anywhere they wanted, so there was no need to talk about going inside the plane. In order to find the coordinates of the capital, it took a lot of effort. A lady stood in front of Ji Nan and nervously said, "Mister, the auction will start in 3 days." Her name was Long Xian. She had a pair of dragon horns on her head. She had the blood of a dragon. Wu Jing had given her to Ji Nan as a guide. Before this, Long Xian had been told how powerful Ji Nan was. Since she had been given away as a gift, she could not go back. In 3 days. Who is the organizer of the auction? Where do they put the auction items? Ji Nan asked. He did not want to get involved in the fight between Zhuozhuo and Red. He just wanted to get what he wanted and leave. If he could find out where the life and death stone was, he did not mind stealing it. If he could not afford it, it was better to just steal it. The silent destroyer sky was Zhuozhuo's territory. His faction reputation could not be leveled up, so he might as well make use of it. Long Xian was even more nervous. She stuttered, I heard it is a mysterious cellar. They are holding an auction in 16 areas at the same time. They are all in the capital. It is a big deal. Even Ji Yunan could not help but be slightly stunned. 16 areas were holding an auction at the same time. That meant they were spreading their influence across the entire silent destroyer sky. That was a big deal. To be able to do something like this without the public knowing the identity of the seller or where the item came from, the seller had to be special. Ji Yunan shook his head. The identity of the seller did not matter to him. He only cared about the high-quality life and death stone. In that case, I will just wait. It is only 3 days. Even if he was in a hurry, Ji Yunan could not wait for 3 days. Deep in space, in a small, remote place, Chen Han was in front of a table. He was wearing reading glasses. He was reading a file. With Chen Han's power, his eyesight was not damaged. This pair of reading glasses was a habit he had left behind in his early years. It was a habit he had when flipping through important documents. He changed the font and slowed down his reading speed to ensure that he did not miss out on any information. Ji Yunan, what a scary young man. After an unknown amount of time, he took off his reading glasses and covered the file in front of him. He sighed. After returning from the Golden Giant tribe, Chen Han knew that he could not escape. He had to help them get rid of Ji Yunan. If someone like Jin Wuyin wanted to kidnap him, he would have a way to find him. Therefore, Chen Han found a small dimension where time flowed very slowly, and found out Ji Yunan's past information bit by bit, then analyzed it word by word. It was such a detailed analysis that led Chen Han to a rather terrifying conclusion. Ji Yunan's strength was definitely not as simple as what others saw. It was not as simple as just increasing his strength at an extremely fast pace. If one analyzed his every move since his debut, they would find that he always had a clear goal. He was like a sharp sword pointing at the enemy's weakness. It was just that his goal did not have any logical connection with improving his power. That was why people would overlook this. But when he put his experiences together, he could see that it was not a coincidence that this happened again and again. There is still one more thing missing. He seems to be able to improve his power from these unrelated things. What is it? Chen Han tapped his fingers. He could not help but think of Jin Wuyin. That's right. The Golden Giant. If there was anything in the world that he could not understand, wouldn't it be the alien tribe? Ji Yunan might really be a descendant of the Golden Giant. He might have accidentally awakened some strange talent in his tribe. That was why he could improve his power so quickly. As for those unrelated things, they were most likely the secret techniques of the Golden Giant tribe. The more Chen Han thought about it, the more he felt that it was possible. He had already combed through Ji Yunan's background. The only thing he lacked was the improvement of his power. The golden bloodline made up for it perfectly. At this moment, another piece of information was delivered to him. There was a red urgent symbol on top. Chapter 268. Chen Han had operated in many worlds for many years. He had an elite intelligence team that collected and analyzed all kinds of information for him. The information that the intelligence team gave him an A rating was basically confirmed to be true. Chen Han opened the information file and quickly scanned the contents. After a while, he could not help but feel excited. There was a 90% chance that the information was written about Ji Yunan. He had suddenly appeared in Silent Destruction Sky and used his body to break the protective by Sema. Then, he had easily killed 4 world breakers. Plus, it was not difficult to find out the identities of the people who came with him. They were all world breakers from Purple Civ Sky. Hadn't Ji Yunan appeared in Purple Civ Sky before? With Chen Han's shrewdness, he actually had the intention of showing joy on his face at this moment. It was really because Ji Yunan's short but soul-stirring resume had brought him too much pressure. He was afraid that a person like Ji Yunan, who had a clear goal, would not appear and participate in anything. He was afraid that he would disappear. As for the power that Ji Yunan had displayed, he did not feel anything. Information from words was not as powerful as seeing it with his own eyes. Plus, Qian Han suspected that Ji Yunan was of the golden giant race. Wasn't it normal for him to have a super strong fitness? Ji Yunan's goal and whereabouts were not hidden from Wu Jing, so Qian Han knew. Life and Death Stone. The capital of the Clear Valley region? Qian Han smiled. His body slowly disappeared, and he quickly flew into outer space. 3 days was not a long time, but it was not a short time either. Ji Yunan sat in the side courtyard. Soon, it was time for the auction to begin. In these 3 days, he kept asking for information about the auction. But there was still no information about the mysterious seller. He could not find out where the goods were stored. For an auction of this level, the auction items must have been secretly stored in other planes. When the auction began, they would be slowly transported to Silent Destruction Sky. That way, unless someone could rob it in front of countless elites, there was no need to worry about safety. As soon as the auction started, Ji Yunan tore open the void and arrived at the scene. However, he had no intention of bringing the half-dragon girl with him, nor did he have any proof of entry. However, there was no chance for a cliché like being blocked from entering to happen. The person who could come in this way must be a world breaker. Did world breakers need proof to enter? Seeing Ji Yunan arrive, 2 people immediately came to greet him. After greeting him, they respectfully handed over a black number plate, and then one of them led Ji Yunan into the venue. Ji Yunan was led to a separate quiet room, which was clearly on the 2nd floor of the venue. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, he could see everything that was going on below. Not long after, the lights in the hall began to dim, all focused on the central booth. An enchanting woman with a graceful figure, but the lower half of her body was that of a snake, was twisting her waist as she walked onto the stage. Immediately, there was an uproar at the scene. The audience laughed and made a lot of noise. After all, there were only a few Breakworld elites. The main force of the auction was still a large number of superhumans. This snake-bodied woman was very famous. She was very popular. That is Lung Yedi. Wasn't she taken away by some big shot? Why is she an auctioneer here? Even if she was taken away, she could still spit it out. TSK, I really want to know who the seller of the auction is. How generous. Similar conversations kept coming. Most of them expressed their surprise at the power of the organizer of the auction. Lung Yedi was a popular person in the Clear Valley region. That was why she had come here. Naturally, the other regions also had similar candidates. This was an auction held by 16 regions at the same time. While people were constantly amazed at the seller's generosity, Lung Yedi, who was on the stage, finally opened her mouth with a smile. Seniors, fellow cultivators, welcome. There was nothing special at the beginning. Lung Yedi's voice was soft and sweet, with a strange sense of friction, which made people's hearts itch. Ji Yunan sat in the room on the 2nd floor with no expression, looking down coldly. The opening was over, and the first auction item was slowly being brought up. However, this was not Ji Yunan's goal. According to the auction list, the life and death stone that he needed would be the 4th item on the stage. However, at this moment, he smelled a strange fragrance slowly drifting out of the room, and a shadow began to appear in front of him. It was a Buddha in a golden kasaya, bowing to him with both hands. Amitabha, benefactor, please go to hell. The auction was not going very fast, but the atmosphere was very lively. Lung Yedi was obviously an excellent auctioneer. She could not only stir up the atmosphere, but also prolong the auction to raise the price as much as possible. Therefore, the first 3 items had already been sold at sky-high prices. When the 4th item was about to be auctioned, the atmosphere at the scene reached its peak. Life and Death Stone, Life and Death Stone. Stop talking nonsense. Hurry up and bring the premium Life and Death Stone. The first 3 rounds of auctions had completely heated up the atmosphere at the auction. Everyone below the stage was getting more and more immersed in the auction items. The Life and Death Stone was a special product of the solitary destruction heaven, but this did not mean that the natives had no demand for it. On the contrary, the outside world would only use the Life and Death Stone at special times. On the contrary, many natives were using it to practice or even create cultivation techniques, so the Life and Death Stone had become their regular demand. Lung Yedi did not disappoint their enthusiasm. A crystal stone that was almost the size of a palm was slowly moved to the auction stage. The cheers below the stage became more and more enthusiastic. Lung Yedi did not read the auction speech. Instead, she covered her mouth and laughed softly. Let me tell everyone another piece of news. This time, the fourth item in the joint auction of the 16 territories is also the life and death stone. Her words made everyone confused, and even the noise became quieter. What did she mean by auctioning the life and death stone at the same time? On the stage, Lung Yedi's laughter continued, and she began to reveal a hint of coldness. The life and death stone. Of course, it is to be the array eye of the solitary destruction life and death spell. As soon as she finished speaking, endless blood-red light began to rise from the ground, and a monstrous killing intent engulfed the entire scene. The center where Lung Yedi stood was where the blood-red light was the densest. Only then did people realize that the 3 treasures that were auctioned earlier were also emitting blood-red light and automatically flew out from the hands of the 3 buyers. They were obviously auxiliary materials for the spell. This is a scam. This auction has been a scam from start to finish. Someone realized something was wrong, but his reaction seemed a bit slow. Solitary destruction life and death spell? Wasn't this an ancient formation? Now, there are people who can. The cultivators of solitary destruction sky had thought about the unknown origins of the sellers, but there were so many elites there. Who would have thought they would dare to do something like this? Someone started to question the stage. Lung Yedi, your family and sect are all here. What good is it for you to do this? Lung Yedi coldly laughed. Her seductive presence slowly faded. She put her hands together, and her body looked like it was in Zen. My Buddha is merciful. If you don't want to put down the butcher's knife, why don't you go to hell? Her words were cold and merciful at the same time. 2 completely different presences appeared at the same time. The people below the stage could not answer. The blood-red light kept coming out from the ground. It affected their rule powers and swallowed their power. Some people started to look back at the second floor. The people sitting there were all Breakworld characters. Would they just sit there and do nothing? Lung Yedi noticed what they were doing, but she did not do anything. She just coldly laughed. The Breakworld people were their primary targets. Another big spell had been quietly activated to trap them. If everything went well, the Breakworld people would all be trapped in the Buddha land. They just needed to put the life and death stone in the spell eye and open the solitary destruction life and death spell. Huh! When Lung Yedi turned around, she was shocked to see a shadow standing next to her. He was playing with the life and death stone. Outside the endless space, a young lady was sitting on a black lotus. She was mumbling something. A shadow appeared in front of her. He quietly said, Buddha, something happened in solitary destruction sky. Someone broke through the Buddha land. Chapter 269. Buddha. Endless Buddhist chants and boundless Buddhist lands. The entire auction venue seemed to have turned into a land of 10,000 Buddhas. There were countless Zen wills hidden in the space, and there seemed to be Buddhas and golden lotuses appearing in the surroundings. However, the background of this scene was a terrifying blood-red killing array. The blood-red light and the Zen were perfectly combined. In the entire universe, there was only one person who could do such a thing, the reincarnated young girl, Wu Gui, who had turned from Buddha into a demon. No Return had been planning for a long time for the change in the solitary destruction sky. She knew the terrain very well, so she stepped into the place where the change took place. A familiar figure that she didn't want to see at all showed up in front of her. Lung Yedi was dumbfounded. Seeing that the life and death stone was taken away, she changed her expression. You are, before she could finish speaking, she was stopped by an invisible force and gently pushed to the side. Of course, the gentle method came from No Return behind her. If it were Jiyu Nan, she would have been beheaded. Lung Yedi turned around in shock, only to see that it was No Return. She was so panicked that she didn't even know where to put her hands. She bowed and stared at No Return with glittering eyes like a pilgrim. You again? No Return seemed to be having a headache. She felt that every time she wanted to do something, she would run into this guy. Ji Yunan had confirmed in his mind that the life and death stone in front of him met the requirements of the evil god's temple both in terms of quality and quantity, so the temple of gods could be built. In a good mood, Ji Yunan shook the life and death stone in his hand and replied, "I need this. I heard that you have it, so I came. I want this. You have it, so I came to take it." This logic didn't seem out of place, so young girl No Return could accept it. She was already used to Ji Yunan's style of doing things. "But I use it to kill people. What about me if you take it away?" No Return asked with a faint smile, but she couldn't stop looking at Ji Yunan. Her power had been recovering very quickly. She had finally completely rebuilt her own laws and returned to the Star-Lord level. She was looking for someone to test her power on. Between a Star-Lord and a Breakworld class, there was no gap that could not be crossed. There was still a difference. This was especially true for a reincarnated old monster like young girl No Return. She had too many ways to make good use of her rank advantage. However, in the next moment, she realized that something was wrong. Ji Yunan tilted his head, and his gaze suddenly became dangerous. Then, a strong gust of wind blew over. A simple punch went straight for the girl No Return's face. After reaching Tier 5, Ji Yunan's evil god physique was no weaker than when he had activated his heavenly god physique. At most, he no longer had the imposing aura of a heavenly god. But his fist was fast, and No Return's reaction was not slow. Suddenly, 3 pairs of arms sprouted from her back, and 2 heads popped out from her left and right, 3 heads and 8 arms, the true form of innumerable Buddhas. However, her Buddha body was very weird. One of the heads was a Buddha and the other was a demon. One looked calm and peaceful, and the other looked terrifying. Even the arms behind her were performing Buddhist hand gestures and the other half was performing demonic true techniques. Facing Ji Yunan's punch, No Return didn't hold back at all. 1,296 Buddhist and demonic true techniques overlapped, and she pressed her hands forward. Ji Yunan's soul was so powerful that he had already seen this scene in his heart, but he didn't care and still punched forward. The fist and the palm collided, but there was no sound at all. The space around them collapsed, and wisps of darkness quickly spread out. Neither of them intended to control the aftermath, so the darkness that had only been there a moment ago spread to the entire scene in the blink of an eye. Hundreds of transcendents, including Lung Yi Dai, were crushed into powder before they could even moan. The World Breakers were also struggling. The 2 Star-Lord elites were fighting at full power. Just the shattered space was enough to destroy them. After a long time, the darkness finally disappeared. The feature of space breaking separated the two, but neither of them had the upper hand. However, No Return knew that the other party actually had the upper hand. He had used the power of laws to block the other party's attack, but the other party only used the power of his body. In terms of endurance, the other party still had the upper hand. Ji Yunan didn't continue to attack. He had never been interested in an enemy who couldn't be killed with one punch and wouldn't gain anything even if he killed them. On the other hand, the girl No Return stood quietly on the side, looking at Ji Yunan in disbelief. She wasn't like Qian Han, who spent his entire life breaking through the break world. She knew the difference between a Star-Lord and a break world fighter. Even if he didn't deliberately use the power of laws, the feeling that his mind and rules were complete meant that he was a Star-Lord. So, the girl No Return became silent. She looked at Ji Yunan with hesitation. "You became a Star-Lord?" "Yes." Ji Yunan nodded casually, then turned around to leave. He even opened a crack in space. However, right at this moment, he stopped moving. Because he noticed that this world was actually showing signs of collapse. On the other side of the sky, in the deepest part of Star World, Red's face was pale. Zwa was still standing in front of her. As the Superstar Lord in charge of Silent Sky, Zwa's power was above Red's. She was more than a little stronger. If they were 2 Star Lords with similar power, he would have been dragged out of Red's Star World for a long time. But Zwa had used her own power to suppress Red in Star World for a few years. She had left the entire Star World in ruins. If it wasn't for Ji Yunan's sudden appearance, perhaps Red would have completely fallen. Of course, if it weren't for Ji Yunan, perhaps Zwa wouldn't have been able to find the fairy demon world, and she wouldn't have come back to Star World. Putting all of this aside, in Red's palace, there was a figure standing between Zwazwa and Red. She wore a blood-red windbreaker and was petite. It was Shadow Song. My cute little brother. After so many years, you haven't changed at all. Shadow Song covered her mouth and laughed. There was no smile in her eyes, only a bone-deep killing intent. The boy side of Zwazwa became kinder, while the girl side became more and more ferocious. She even began to laugh wildly. You still dare to appear in front of me? The two sides of his body seemed to become uncoordinated, and the two voices alternated. You're just a fake. A defective product. I'm the most perfect one. What do you want to prove by coming here? Do you want to say that you've succeeded? Ridiculous, ridiculous. As long as I kill you. Zwazwa's voice began to separate. One moment it was bone-piercing, the next moment it was deep and gloomy. In the end, he returned to being an ordinary middle-aged man. Chapter 270. It's begun. Wugue's voice was calm, but there was a hint of melancholy in it. When faced with the collapse of a heaven-grade astral realm, even the young girl Wugue couldn't see it often. Beside her, the space that had collapsed during her battle with Jiyu Nan didn't show any signs of healing. Instead, it continued to collapse. In the sky of silent destruction heaven, a faint image was projected. It was Red's palace. However, what he saw was Zwazwa's first-person perspective. It seemed that he had reached a critical juncture. The astral plane was almost on the verge of merging with him. Who are you? What are you afraid of? Do you really think no one knows? Question after question came out of Shadow Song's mouth. Zwazwa's expression became more and more distorted. Even her body began to twist. However, his voice remained the same as that of a middle-aged man. You know? Who knows? As long as I kill you. Shadow Song's face revealed a mocking smile. Listen to your voice. You can deceive the world, but can you deceive us? My dear father? As Shadow Song's voice fell, Zwazwa's movements suddenly froze. Then, as if she had gone mad, she roared, Kill you. I am Zwazwa. I am the master of silent destruction heaven. Where is my power? In a certain corner of Purple Civ heaven, Purple Will and Purple Lightning simultaneously sighed when they saw this. So it really is him. Only Red didn't care. She calmly stood up and spoke indifferently. Back then, at the final step of the fusion experiment, you were heavily injured and on the verge of death. Even your soul couldn't be preserved. So you separated your son and daughter and swapped half of their bodies. Then, you infused your own soul into the main body of your son's soul. But you didn't expect that the experiment you placed such high hopes on would still be stuck at the final step. For tens of thousands of years, you maintained this half-human, half-ghost state. You also didn't expect that the other half of the child you abandoned would spontaneously come together and fuse perfectly without the slightest bit of mutual rejection. Red was like a narrator who had nothing to do with herself. She told Zwazwa everything she had done in the past, but it was like the sharpest knife, stabbing into Zwazwa's body. Red walked over to Shadow Song's side and gently stroked her blood-red hair. I gave her the blood ancestor's origin, allowing her to cleanse herself generation after generation. Finally, the parts that belonged to you were completely washed away. In Silent Destroyer Heaven, young Lady No Return revealed a look of realization. So Zwazwa and Zwazwa have always been two people, no wonder. After all, she was not one of the people involved in the incident that year, and her understanding of Zwazwa was not as deep as those people. It was only when he heard Red's explanation that he gradually understood what was going on. Zwazwa was indeed the one from back then. It was just that his body contained the souls of both father and son. The son was the primary, and the father was secondary. That was why he often acted abnormally. Wu Gui withdrew his various thoughts, only to discover that Jiyu Nan, who was beside him, was sizing up the surroundings, and didn't seem surprised at all. Aren't you surprised? You already knew? She narrowed her eyes. If Jiyu Nan knew about this beforehand, then perhaps he knew what? Jiyu Nan looked at her in confusion, then reacted. Oh, you're talking about Zwazwa. I'm not interested. Ji Nan used a firm not interested to block all of the girl's questions in the bottom of her heart. Ji Nan obviously wasn't interested in this sort of cutscene CG. He was busy observing the situation in silent destruction heavens. If this place really collapsed, it wouldn't be a bad idea to take it as a private dungeon. In the Divine Kingdom stage, players could do more and more things. Conquering other dungeons was one of them. But at this moment, the sky above their heads gradually split open again, and a ray of golden light gradually pierced through. Just by showing up, Zhuozhuo was forced to the edge of a cliff. Even his background was exposed. It was clear that his decision to kill Shadow Song was absolutely the right one. But on the other hand, Zhuozhuo was still the master of the stars. The entire situation wouldn't completely collapse just because of one sentence from Shadow Song. In reality, up until now, the initiative was still in his hands. As long as he could defeat the 10,000-year-old demon in his heart, he could still take back his power. My power. Zhuo's was two voices intertwined, sometimes young, sometimes mature. At this moment, he suddenly raised a hand and pierced it into his chest. In his chest, under the dense and complicated veins, there was clearly an alternating red and blue heart beating. And at this moment, the red part was completely stripped out. Shadow Song's gaze froze. She didn't expect him to destroy his core in order to obtain a moment of peace. This was cutting off all means of retreat. Zhuozhuo's surging aura gradually calmed down. His gaze also gradually calmed down. He looked ahead coldly. You have people in silent destruction heavens. He could clearly feel the power from the astral world rapidly weakening. Even the connection had become unstable. This is all thanks to you, Shadow Song sneered. If you hadn't stayed here for so many years, no return wouldn't have been able to set up so easily. Zhuozhuo stayed in the astral world to completely suppress red, but at the same time, she had also neglected silent destruction heavens. So it was her. Zhuozhuo nodded. He gently opened his palm, and the red and blue heart was instantly annihilated. Shadow Song and Red froze at the same time. They had thought that Zhuozhuo would go hysterical, counterattack in the face of death, and destroy indiscriminately. But they hadn't expected him to do this. This was suicide. Unlike other experts, Zhuozhuo's body was a fusion of two bodies. Once his core was destroyed, he would immediately fall apart. However, while they were still in a daze, an inexplicable fluctuation of nomological laws suddenly appeared behind Red. Red, who had been in a stalemate with Zhuozhuo for so many years and was already an arrow at the end of its flight, was instantly pierced through by this law, leaving a bloody wound on his chest. Shadow Song turned around in shock. Zhuozhuo's original body had already been annihilated, and behind Red, there were two bodies that had been split in half. These two halves only had one side of each body, as if they had been cut in half by a sharp blade. What kind of law is this? Shadow Song stared at this scene in a daze. Even with her 10,000 years of experience, she couldn't recognize the origin of this strange scene. It was only at this moment that a clear and cold voice finally arrived. Life and death, left and right. This voice seemed to come out of nowhere, but Shadow Song suddenly turned around because she clearly recognized that this voice came from Zhuozhuo's female body. There's a third spirit. Who are you? Shadow Song finally realized that something was wrong. Everything had been too smooth, so smooth that it was unbelievable. Since Zhuozhuo already knew of her existence, would she not have held back? The woman who had obtained half of Zhuozhuo's body did not answer her, only moving her limbs. Zhuozhuo looked down at Red from above, finally revealing a victorious smile. The astral realm is such a good place. There are more geniuses than just that little fellow. You've missed out on too many. Of course, Red's eyes were filled with surprise, but she mostly found it funny. You gave her half of your body. Do you think you can get it back? Zhuozhuo laughed loudly. I still have silent destructive heaven. What does she have to compete with me? Do you think that a single Buddha can completely destroy my astral realm? Huh? Even though it was a very weak connection, Zhuozhuo could clearly feel an astonishing aura of law descending on silent destructive heaven. Silent destructive heaven. Chapter 271. Golden light showered down. Jin Wuyin was like an invincible giant, descending with terrifying power. As the purest golden giant, Jin Wuyin could always remain in his original form. On the contrary, his usual human form was the result of him deliberately hiding it. Qian Han had a smile on his face as he stood quietly next to Jin Wuyin. He looked down at Ji Yunan and the young girl. No return. No matter how cunning you are, you were still caught by this old man in the end. When it was time to collect the fruits of victory, even the shrewd Qian Han could not help but feel a little happy. He had indeed put in a lot of effort to find Ji Yunan's whereabouts. A Star Master Golden Giant. No return frowned. Jin Wuyin used his full power, which allowed her to see through him. This made No return a little confused. Since when were Star Masters so worthless? Why were they popping up one after another? Under normal circumstances, the probability of meeting a Star Lord was extremely small, even in the myriad heavens and realms. If extraordinaires stood at the peak of the mortal world, and world breakers had already left the mortal world, then Star Masters were on a completely different level. World breakers might need the power of the mortal world to do things for them and gather resources to improve, but Star Masters did not need that at all. Most of their energy was spent on the inner world, looking for a suitable astral world in the starry path. In other words, Star Masters paid attention to the world itself, not the people living in it. You are Ji Yunan? As soon as Jin Wuyin appeared, a thunderous voice came, followed by his fist. Although he asked, his hands did not slow down at all. Ji Yunan did not stop. He punched back without hesitation. He even leaped forward, heading straight for Jin Wuyin. Golden Giant, you came at the right time. Ji Yunan was a little happy that Jin Wuyin had come to him. This was not the first time he met young Master Jin. Back then, he was busy building his god nation. There were many things waiting to be done, so he did not care about anything else. But now, the foundation of Ji Yunan's god nation was complete. He had a stable source of resources and points, so he had more energy to think about other things. For example, outside the universe, or some alien races that were suitable to be subdued as god messengers. Fist against fist. Just how strong was Ji Yunan's Tier 5 evil god body? Even with young girl No Gui's Buddha Dao golden body, she couldn't resist it with just her body alone. She had to hand over the Buddha demon true intent to barely resist it. As the leader of the Golden Giant tribe, Jin Wuyin's body was his strongest weapon. Unlike the clash between the two fists, this time, the two fists collided with a deafening explosion. Then, both of them took a step back. When their feet landed on the ground, they actually created two deep pits in the ground and kicked up a cloud of dust. This punch was a solid collision. It was not a matter of destroying the laws. The terrifying power caused both sides to suffer serious injuries. Ji Yunan's right hand was almost completely broken, the white bone poking out from his elbow. Jin Wuyin was not in a better state, his hand was a mess of blood and flesh, and his wrist was broken at a weird angle. You're definitely not from my Golden Giant tribe. Who are you? Jin Wuyin's right hand was shaking. He couldn't hide the shock in his heart as he shouted. He had thought that Ji Yunan was a descendant of his tribe who wanted to subdue him and bring him back, so he hadn't used his full strength. But even if he hadn't used his full strength, it was impossible for anyone to fight with him to this extent without revealing their true form unless the other party wasn't from the Golden Giant tribe at all. Ji Yunan's right hand was recovering rapidly. In the blink of an eye, his bones had completely recovered, and his skin was also growing back quickly. This caused Jin Wuyin, who had a hard time recovering from his injuries, to stare so wide that his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. For a race like him, the stronger their body, the longer it would take for them to recover from their injuries. On the other hand, there was no such restriction if one's strength was boosted by various methods. Golden Giant Tribe. Are you interested in becoming my god envoy? Ji Yunan asked with a faint smile. He didn't hesitate, and immediately tapped on a law. He knew that Jin Wuyin hadn't used his full strength just now, and it would be quite troublesome to deal with him under normal circumstances. So, he used a skill without hesitation, Deity Descending. Deity Descending enhanced by shadow. Wisps of black light shone from Ji Yunan's back, and an incomparably majestic and cold aura seeped out bit by bit, almost enveloping the entire world. this? The young girl, no return, stared at this scene in a daze. The Azura half behind her suddenly jumped, showing signs of breaking free from her control. She had originally been watching the battle from the side, but Ji Yunan's sudden appearance and the crazily surging gloominess almost triggered her devil intent. The terrifying black fog continued to surge out, almost enveloping Ji Yunan's entire body. His body quickly swelled up, and his body was also cleansed into a dark color. His originally pitch-black pupils were also tinged with a hint of purple. And the black fog around his body slowly gathered behind him, turning into pairs of bone wings. There were exactly 12 wings, and he looked frighteningly ferocious. After this transformation, even Ji Yunan couldn't recognize himself. He looked back in surprise. What is this? A 12-winged bone angel? Even in the game in his previous life, there weren't many people who could use the deity rule. This thing required a lot of investment in the early stages, and had a long cooldown. It was a 5-second real man type of skill, and not everyone liked to use it. And after Ji Yunan advanced to the 5th level, and with the support of shadow power, even Ji Yunan couldn't predict what his current deity state would be like. But he soon knew the answer, because Jin Wuyin and the young girl, No Return, almost at the same time, blurted out, 9 serenities heavenly demon. The 9 skies were the heavens, and the 9 serenities were the earth. Shadow power was originally of the dark attribute, and the deity that was originally above the 9 skies, after being controlled by the shadows, naturally fell into the 9 serenities and became a demon. In the original records of the world, the 9 serenities heavenly demon was exactly what Ji Yunan looked like now. Heavenly demon? Of course, Ji Yunan heard what the two called him. He looked at his dark purple skin, and felt the power of the 12 wings behind him, tacitly agreeing to this name. The young girl, No Return, took a step back without a trace. This situation had already exceeded her expectations, but it also explained the doubts she had all along. Ji Yunan's speed of advancement was actually faster than her own strength recovery. How was this possible? So he was the reincarnation of a heavenly demon. Now that he had returned to the Star-Lord level, he could finally display the power of his previous life. With this thought in her mind, one doubt after another seemed to have been answered at the same time. No Return sized up Ji Yunan with a deep gaze. Jin Wuyin's mouth was already twitching. He wanted to escape, but found that the space around him had already been frozen by the omnipresent majestic aura, and there was no way to escape. In this situation, he didn't say anything, but turned around and ran back. The space was locked, but at least his incomparably strong body could still move. Chapter 272. Golden Giant, 9 Underworld Heavenly Demon, Zwa, who was in the astral realm, felt the aura coming from her own astral realm, and her mouth began to twitch. Why did all these things, which were usually not seen even once in a few hundred years, suddenly appear at this critical juncture? Even if they were locked in a fierce battle and had no intention of working together to snatch the destructive skies, just the aftermath of their battle was enough to affect her. Her astral realm, which already had a weak connection with her, could no longer receive any power. Zwa, who only had half of her body left, swept her gaze over the 3 women beside her, and her expression became more and more solemn. Ji Yunyan, who had sacrificed the other half of her body to revive her with a unique law, was naturally her enemy, and they would fight over the remaining body. Red and Shadow Song were even more so. In short, everyone here was her enemy. Then, let's fight. In the destructive skies, Ji Yunan, who had transformed into a heavenly demon, attacked casually, and Qian Han's entire body was directly locked down, and all the laws were instantly shattered. Ji Yunan had already discovered that the strongest aspect of his heavenly god or heavenly demon state was not his own power, but his ability to naturally lock down space. Back then, in order to lock down Yu Ju's escape route, Wu Guei had expended a lot of effort to create a temporary spatial lock with the Buddhist kingdom. But after Ji Yunan activated his heavenly god law, the heavenly god's aura had the ability to break through laws, and it was enough to completely solidify space. Because of this, Qian Han had no chance of escaping, and Jin Wuyin could only rely on his legs to escape. Do you think you can escape? Ji Yunan looked at Jin Wuyin, who was about to disappear from his sight, and only laughed coldly. He took a step forward, and instantly appeared behind Jin Wuyin. Jin Wuyin turned back in shock, wondering why Ji Yunan could still open up space. Since space itself was solidified, Ji Yunan should not be able to use it. The next moment, he understood that this was not teleportation, but pure speed. Even more terrifying speed was yet to come. Without Jin Wuyin noticing, Ji Yunan's fist had already landed on his face, and he instantly fell to the ground. Ji Yunan's heavenly demon body was also completely composed of laws. Not only did his fists carry a terrifying force, but they also contained countless laws of the netherworld. Corrosion, dissolution, weathering, disintegration. Layers of vicious yet highly effective laws of nature kept appearing on Jin Wuyin's face. The golden giant's powerful body seemed to have become a testing machine for the laws, testing the strength of these laws. Jin Wuyin was directly knocked down by this punch, and there were even signs that his face was fractured. For a moment, it was difficult for him to get up, and so he was punched repeatedly by Ji Yunan. Ji Yunan already discovered that his heavenly deity law after advancing to rank 5 had some changes again. At the 4th level, it still focused on strengthening the body, but at the 5th level, deity's descent, it seemed to focus more on the damage of the laws attached to the attacks. With Ji Yunan's rich experience, he understood in the blink of an eye what was going on. His current diabolic body had already reached the limits of the first job transition. The first job transition was a threshold, and before one crossed this threshold, there was a limit to one's power. The power of the heavenly god could only be manifested in the aspect of laws. But in other words, this also meant that the strength of Ji Yunan's current body, excluding those star lords with astral realms, was already at the peak. Jin Wuyin was a golden giant after all. Even though he was completely powerless against Ji Yunan, he did not have any intention of giving up. He took advantage of a gap in Ji Yunan's attack and finally managed to block a punch. Then, he turned around and fled. Even though he was already covered in injuries, he still did not give up hope. This guy had caused such a huge commotion. Why hadn't the Star Lord of this world come out yet? Hey! Your home is about to be destroyed by someone. As Jin Wuyin fled frantically, he cursed the useless Star Lord in his heart. He, who had lived in outer space for a long time, really did not know what was happening in the world. Zhuozhuo, who had been scolded by Jin Wuyin as the useless Star Lord, was in an even worse situation than him. He only had half a body left, and he only had half of his power left. He could not get any help from still destructive sky, so he was in grave danger. Fortunately, among his opponents, Ji Yunyan was not familiar with his new identity. Hong Gang had been injured by his sneak attack, and Shadow Song had just recovered his break world power. It was this old, weak, sick, and disabled trio that gave Zhuozhuo a chance to survive. Zhuozhuo, under the combined attacks of the three, suddenly stopped. A black shadow appeared in front of him, blocking the attacks of the three. He then tore space and stepped inside. He did not even want his other half. He turned around and ran. Ji Yunyan did not even think. He followed him into the space crack. Shadow Song frowned. He gnashed his teeth and wanted to follow, but Red stopped him. Let him go. Red's face was very pale, but her voice was very calm. Let's destroy still destructive sky and let them fight. Shadow Song's eyes brightened. He understood what Red meant. A body could not be separated for long. Between Ji Yunyan and Zhuozhuo, only one could survive. They were natural enemies. If they controlled still destructive sky and did not give Zhuozhuo any extra help, they would both be hurt. In still destructive sky, Jin Wuyin's body was close to breaking down. He could only run for a few hits, but he could not outrun Ji Yunan's scary speed. The Gold Leader was very good at taking hits. Even though his body was covered in rule powers, and he was breathing more than he was breathing, he was still able to speak. Mister, the Gold Race has no grudge against you. He looked like he was admitting defeat, but before he could finish, Ji Yunan's fist came down again. That punch was like a qualitative change. It made Jin Wuyin's head tilt. His neck twisted at a weird angle. In the next moment, an endless darkness came out of Ji Yunan's body. It crazily swallowed Jin Wuyin. Aren't you going to let him live? The young girl, No Return, had arrived at his side. I want to see the Gold Giant race. I only need one to lead the way. Ji Yunan pointed at Qian Han, who was still chained up. Since he was interested in the gold race, he obviously could not let their leader live. He did not need a leader with a lot of authority. What a pity, Zhuozhuo is not dead. Ji Yunan shook his head again. If the Star Lord was not dead, no one could take away the Star World unless they could find the world's origin. In Still Destructive Sky, this was a huge project. Moreover, if Zhuozhuo was defeated, there would be many people interested in Still Destructive Sky. Perhaps there was already a fight in the All-Heaven Star Path. If the origin was taken away, it would be like drawing water with a sieve. Ji Yunan still maintained his Sky Demon form. After reaching the 5th stage, even his transformation time seemed to have increased. He picked up Qian Han and planned to return to God Nation. "Can you leave this person to me?" A voice came from the horizon. It was Red and Shadow Song. "I can provide you the location of the Gold Giant race." Qian Han looked at Red from afar. His eyes were filled with despair. Red's voice was no different from before. It was the same as when Ji Yunan first met her. However, Ji Yunan was no longer the same person as before. "Why?" Ji Yunan placed Qian Han beside him and asked. Red calmly said, "He betrayed me and knows some of my secrets. I will not let him live." Chapter 273. Red looked at Ji Yunan quietly, not saying a word. She was someone who had become a Star Lord 10,000 years ago. In these 10,000 years, there probably wasn't a second person who spoke to her like this. But the reason was very simple: she had to pay to take something, unless she was like Ji Yunan and killed the seller. Even No Gui and Jin Wuyin could recognize the 9 Serenities' heavenly demon, so Red naturally wasn't unfamiliar with it. She knew better than anyone that this heavenly demon wasn't Ji Yunan's original body. It was at most an ability she had seen with her own eyes that Ji Yunan had transformed into a heavenly god. With this state, Ji Yunan naturally couldn't be the reincarnation of some heavenly demon. It was because of this understanding that Red didn't understand Ji Yunan's current attitude. Anyone with the slightest bit of foresight would understand that using Qian Han to get on her good side was the best choice. Even if he had suggested using an insignificant Qian Han in exchange for the benefits of the solitary destructive skies and the astral realm, she might have agreed. Why was he so obsessed with Qian Han? Ji Yunan stared back at Red without flinching, even though he knew that he was still before his first-class advancement and couldn't fight Red head-on for the time being. There was no such thing as spitting out the things that the players had eaten. "Then let's try." Red obviously wouldn't say things like "what do you want?" and directly chose to attack. With her status, she had never compromised even when facing Zhuozhuo, so how could she give in to Ji Yunan? An indescribable fluctuation of precepts appeared around Ji Yunan and surged madly towards him. What entered Ji Yunan's eyes was a red that seemed to drown the entire world, an overwhelming red that couldn't be concealed at all. Red's law was red. Shadow Song stood next to Red and watched as Ji Yunan was instantly drowned in red. He couldn't help but wonder, he was dealt with so easily. This doesn't seem real. She and Red could barely be considered contemporaries, so she knew very well how terrifying this move of hers was. Very few of the enemies who were trapped by her blood could escape. This red screen wasn't an ordinary technique. It was an abstraction of Red's origin law, and it was almost completely materialized. There weren't many people in the All Heavens world who could materialize laws with their own strength. However, based on her understanding of Ji Yunan, she felt that he wouldn't be killed so easily. "It's not that easy." Red's voice was still calm, but there was a hint of surprise in it. Only those who had personally fought with Ji Yunan knew how difficult this fellow was to deal with. In her perception, the blood that enveloped Ji Yunan was being torn apart at an incredible speed, and she had almost no time to replenish it. It could actually tear apart the laws. What kind of monster was this? Red had never seen a heavenly demon of the 9th underworld, but she was sure that a heavenly demon would never have such an ability. Surrounded by the red curtain, Ji Yunan's body emitted a thick black light, but the red light kept pressing down on him. Ji Yunan was using the stupidest method to break it. He was using his body alone to disperse the red light, punch after punch. According to Ji Yunan's estimation, Red's grade was between level 7 and level 8. However, because she had been suppressed in the astral realm for several years, she couldn't unleash her full strength. She was only using her own strength now. However, her own strength alone was enough to suppress Ji Yunan's rank, rendering most of his laws ineffective. Materialized laws were like the hardest steel and the most pliable satin. They were both hard and flexible at the same time, and they were extremely difficult to destroy. If he wanted to challenge someone of a higher rank, he could only rely on an extremely strong body. The heavenly demon showed no signs of dissipating. This allowed Ji Yunan to fight faster and faster, and the more he fought, the more unscrupulous he became. In the end, he was using both his hands and feet, and even his entire body had become a weapon. The red light continued to invade. This kind of omnipresent enemy might make people feel despair, but Ji Yunan couldn't be more welcoming. This was because he didn't need to make any judgments, and any random punch or kick would land on the spot. Bang! There was the sound of a bubble bursting. The speed at which Red created the red curtain couldn't keep up with Ji Yunan's attacks, and the red curtain was completely pierced through. Under Shadow Song's dumbfounded gaze, Ji Yunan's entire body was covered in black mist, as if he were on fire. He rushed out of the red mist, and then like a sharp arrow, he shot straight at Shadow Song. Shadow Song shouldn't have been able to see his movements clearly, but time seemed to slow down, allowing Ji Yunan to draw a trajectory in her eyes. He broke free from the blood curtain, and then punched right in front of Red. Red looked up. Ripples appeared in front of her, and the red light lingered in front of her like a shield, blocking Ji Yunan's fist. Ji Yunan didn't even think about it. His figure instantly appeared in another direction, and he kicked out again. The same ripples appeared once more. A third punch, a fourth kick. They looked like useless attacks, but Ji Yunan was enjoying it. His movements became faster and faster, without the slightest pause. In Shadow Song's eyes, it was as if Ji Yunan had transformed into countless bodies, attacking from all directions at the same time. As a result, the two of them were surrounded by the red ripples. Go! A soft shout sounded in her ear. Shadow Song turned around in shock, only to see that Red had opened a spatial passage at some point, and was about to return to the astral world. Shadow Song felt a chill down her back, and immediately understood what she meant. She hurriedly stepped into the passage, and then heard a soft sound. One of the red shields had been shattered. This time, Shadow Song was really shocked. She had known Red for so many years, and she had never heard of a materialized rule being directly shattered by someone. Ji Yunan's figure pounced forward again, a crazy smile on his face. The black mist around him became even more unbridled, and this expression seemed to speak of his momentum, the momentum to shatter everything. Red frowned slightly, and waved her hand to send Shadow Song away. She then waved her hand to block Ji Yunan's fist, and a glowing red light lit up on her hand. Kacha. Red's light abruptly paused, and Red's expression stiffened. She clearly felt a strange force pass through her arm, and it actually broke her left hand. Fortunately, Red borrowed this force to escape, and she directly crashed into the spatial passage, making it impossible for Ji Yunan to catch up. As for Ji Yunan, he stood next to the pitch-black crack, watching the two of them leave, but he only revealed a cold smile. The shadow heavenly demon state had already been pushed to the extreme, and now it slowly dissipated, revealing his original appearance. When he turned his head again, there was no trace of No Gui, and only Qian Han was left. Qian Han, this old man, had no intention of running away, because after witnessing the battle just now, he had found his value. Sir. Qian Han revealed a humble smile. This old man has managed the astral world for 1,000 years. As long as Sir is interested in the astral world, this old man is willing to serve Sir. Chapter 274. Star World. Red brought Shadow Song back. Then, she started coughing. The wound that Zwazwa had pierced earlier started to bleed again. How are you? Shadow Song hurriedly supported her, and said in bewilderment, Ji Yunan can already fight with you. Did he find the Star World? Red shook her head. I don't know about the Star World, but without the support of the Star World, I can't do anything to his sky demon true body. I was too careless. When she couldn't get the power of the Star World, she was just a stronger Star Master. She wanted to use her own power to suppress Ji Yunan, but she didn't expect to be suppressed by him. He fought very smart, Red said. He must have seen through me. That's why he fought like this. Shadow Song's eyes were filled with confusion. She really couldn't associate Ji Yunan's crazed look with brilliant tactics. But no matter what, she understood one thing. Ji Yunan used the situation of the Star World to defeat Red. Next time, it won't be like this. Red sighed. Silent Destroyer Sky. Qian Han's face was full of sincerity. He didn't look forced. It wasn't because he was good at acting. He really wanted to rely on Ji Yunan. At least for now. This wasn't the first time he did something like this. After betraying Red and becoming a guide for Zhuozhuo, Qian Han had no place in the Star World. Relying on Ji Yunan was his only option. What use do you have? Ji Yunan asked. Such a question sounded like a taunt, but Ji Yunan was indeed asking. Red wasn't willing to pay, so whether or not Qian Han could keep his life depended on himself. Qian Han didn't even think. He quickly said, Mister, I am a top world breaker. I am very familiar with the Star World. I understand all the worlds. After a pause, he continued, for the past 1,000 years, the astral realm has basically been managed by me. I have the experience of managing an astral realm. With your power, I'm sure it won't be long before you need a steward. Qian Han wasn't sure if Ji Yunan already had an astral world, so he cleverly changed his words. I asked you to help me manage the astral boundary so that you can betray it again. Ji Yunan looked at him meaningfully and smiled. Qian Han wasn't surprised at all. He already knew that with his past record, the other party would definitely be suspicious. Thus, he bowed deeply. That person has let go of power for too long to give this old man a chance. With my lord's alertness, will you also give this old man a chance? He actually advised Ji Yunan to be careful of him, and even flattered him. Ji Yunan laughed silently, grabbed him, and stepped into the divine kingdom. I hope you won't regret it. Deep in the galaxy, in an unknown small plane, the two halves of Zhuozhuo's body were facing each other. What do you want? Zhuozhuo stared angrily ahead. The half of his body was staring at him calmly. After escaping from the astral realm, he had continuously traveled through dozens of small planes to make sure that Red hadn't chased him. Instead, this woman was still following him. She didn't attack, nor did she say a word. She just followed him. But every time Zhuozhuo wanted to turn around, she would immediately avoid him. Zhuozhuo's eyes were slightly cold. He knew he had to take back his body as soon as possible. Otherwise, both of them would die because of the loss of their godly souls. But his opponent didn't seem to be in a hurry at all. She was playing guerrilla warfare with him. Zhuozhuo knew better than anyone that his opponent wanted to compete with him in patience. Maybe his opponent was even more anxious than he was. As long as he could calm down. But how could he calm down? He had planned for so many years, but he lost for some inexplicable reason. Now, the astral boundary was almost controlled by someone. He had to split half of his body. No matter how rational a person was, he couldn't control his anger now. You're starting to panic. An unhurried voice came from the front. The voice was getting closer to the original Ji Yunan. This was the godly soul starting to affect the body. Zhuozhuo took a deep breath and said in a low voice, let's work together and take back solitary destructive heaven. I can give you half of the power of the astral boundary. As long as they could let go of their prejudices, they could form a temporary unit. Taking back the astral boundary would be beneficial to both of them. Ji Yunan was silent for a while. When Zhuozhuo started to get impatient, he asked, how can I trust you? Zhuozhuo relaxed slightly. As expected, no one could resist the temptation of a complete astral boundary. To show my sincerity, I can give you control of my new body. Hearing this, Ji Yunan's remaining eye seemed to brighten. He quickly said, okay. Zhuozhuo didn't waste any time. He flew toward the other side, but he was sneering inside. He wasn't lying. He did plan to give control of his body to Ji Yunan. But once he took back solitary destructive heaven, under Zhuozhuo's incredulous gaze, Ji Yunan used one hand as a knife and chopped down on Zhuozhuo's neck. This chop was obviously premeditated. It directly caused Zhuozhuo to stagger, and a wound was torn open at the broken part of her neck. What do you mean? Zhuozhuo's voice became colder. Ji Yunyan smiled. Compared to trusting you, I'm more willing to kill you. In the Divine Kingdom, Qian Han was casually thrown into the evil god's palace by Ji Yunan so that he could undergo the transformation process. Meanwhile, Ji Yunan had already run to the construction plane. Ji Yunan wasn't worried about Qian Han's loyalty. It wasn't that he had any confidence in Qian Han. It was just that the characteristics of an oracle determined that Ji Yunan wasn't afraid of betrayal. The evil divine palace was very strict with the judgment of an oracle. As long as an oracle showed any disloyalty, Ji Yunan would immediately receive a warning. If it was more serious, the oracle might even be kicked out of the ranks. Therefore, Ji Yunan wasn't worried about those who had been lurking for many years and betrayed him. Instead, those who would rather die than surrender or betray him in the blink of an eye gave him a headache. Moreover, Ji Yunan had a better way to restrict Qian Han. The transformation of an oracle was relatively easy. Before long, Qian Han stood in front of Ji Yunan again. His expression was even more respectful. Sir, go in and try, Ji Yunan said to him and pointed to the building in front. Qian Han turned around. It was an exquisite little house. He didn't know the words on the plaque, but he somehow understood the meaning. The Oracle's embassy. Qian Han glanced at Ji Yunan. He didn't dare to ask anything. He walked in with the mentality of entering the tiger's den. After Qian Han walked into the Oracle's embassy, he saw many shadows floating in front of him. The one at the back was himself. This is, Ji Yunan stood outside the Oracle's embassy. A series of data was being displayed on the page. Name, Qian Han. Martial Power, 128. Internal Affairs, 105. Tactics, 99. Loyalty, 60. When he saw that his loyalty was only at 60 points, Ji Yunan's lips curled into a faint smile. He then clicked on an option on the page, Rank Restriction. Rank Restriction, Rank 3. Chapter 275. Start of ad on the title. End of ad on the title. 1 Chapter 315. Black hole plane H1A style equals color. #00F, ref equals 563-6565. HTML next chapter @ablilage border equals 0 tartable border equals 0 align equals left tartable border equals 0 align equals left tartable border equals 0 align equals left trtdtr table. There really was a way to slash people in this world. Qian Han, who was in the God Embassy, felt as if his world was going to collapse. Slash people. Slash people. Qian Han, who used to manage an astral world, realized that if the Star Masters learned this, all the Breakworld people would become the Star Master's slaves. The Breakworld people were so high because they had the means to protect themselves. Even a powerful Star Master, as long as they did not have the power to lock down space or kill them, they could not stop the Breakworld people from escaping. If the Breakworld people disappeared from their sight, it would not be easy to find them again. If the Star Master had the power to weaken their states, they could suppress the Breakworld people to be superclass. They would lose the ability to protect themselves. Just like now, Qian Han walked out of the God Embassy. He looked like a lonely old man. After losing his Breakworld power, he was able to foresee his fate. He would be kept in the astral world as a treasure trove of knowledge. When the Star Master no longer needed his knowledge, he would be secretly executed like a dog. If it was Qian Han, he would have done it. Ji Yunan did not care about what he was thinking. He called Yang Xiaoxiao over. He asked her to take Qian Han and familiarize him with the God Kingdom. He recruited Qian Han as a God messenger. It was not just for knowledge, as Qian Han thought. He needed Qian Han to manage the God Kingdom for him. Yang Xiaoxiao was familiar with the fairy demon world, but her knowledge was limited to one world. She did not have the mentality of a Breakworld person. She was not the best housekeeper. Furthermore, Ji Yunan would not allow the God Nation to be under the sole management of a single person. If he was worried that someone would betray him, then he would not give that person the chance to do so. Qian Han's previous words were not without reason. In the empty evil god's temple, Ji Yunan stood alone in front of the god's embassy. He suddenly felt refreshed. After coming to this world for so long, he had always seen specious things. Only the familiar numbers on the Temple of God made him feel that everything was under his control. In the oracle's embassy, there was not only Qian Han's data. All the people who had become oracles had detailed information. Name: Yang Xiaoxia. Martial power, 98. Internal affairs, 99. Command, 102. Stamina, 65. Loyalty, 95. Yang Xiaoxia's information was no different from what Ji Yunan had expected. Other than the fact that commander, which was not of much use at the moment, was over 100, the rest were all below 100. In the data of the Shrine of God's consulate, the maximum value of stamina and loyalty was 100 points. As for the other abilities, there was no upper limit. However, 100 was a limit. Once the ability data exceeded 100, the algorithm would be completely different. The required ability would increase exponentially. For example, Yang Xiaoxiao had 98 martial power, but she could at most fight 3 people with 90 martial power. However, an oracle with 105 martial power could easily fight 10 Yang Xiaoxiao. Therefore, even though Qian Han's 128 martial power was only 30 points higher than Yang Xiaoxiao's, the gap was unimaginably large. Yang Xiaoxiao's loyalty was as high as 95 points, so there was no need to worry about it for the time being. Instead, her stamina was only left with 65 points. This meant that the burden on her during this period was a little too heavy. It was urgent to find someone to share it with. Next was Guan Hongchen, Lei Qi, and Lei Ba. They did not exceed Ji Yunan's expectations. Their loyalty was also above 80, and there were no signs of betrayal for the time being. The construction of the God Nation was a type of territorial management. The oracle's function was similar to the hero's altar in some games. The oracles were similar to the heroic generals under the Lord. In fact, after the oracle's embassy surpassed level 3, it could indeed directly summon the oracles. The oracle's embassy could also be used to train the oracles, but this function was temporarily useless. Ji Yunan had no money. At the edge of the heavenly world, Ji Yunyan and Zhuozhuo were still chasing one another. They were about to leave the heavenly world. However, the current situation had become that Ji Yunyan was focused on escaping, and Zhuozhuo was constantly chasing after him. They did not have much time left. The wound on Zhuozhuo's neck continued to deepen, but he did not seem to feel it at all. He continued to chase with a cold expression. In reality, Ji Yunyan's sneak attack did not gain much of an advantage. At most, she could cause some small injuries to Zhuozhuo. She was still far from her goal of killing him. After Zhuozhuo escaped from Red and Shadow Song, she fought Ji Yunyan alone. Even without the support of Silent Destroyer Heaven, she still had a huge advantage. This body originally belonged to him, so he had a far greater understanding of it than the other party. He had been a Star Master for over 10,000 years, so he was incomparably familiar with this level of power. He even had a considerable understanding of the other party's mysterious and unfathomable laws. Right now, his only disadvantage was that the other party was focused on escaping. "How long are you going to run?" Zhuozhuo's cold voice rang out again. Ji Yunyan's figure did not stop. He did not even look back as he continued to jump towards the next plane. Zhuozhuo could only suppress the surging negative emotions and cautiously chase after him. Ji Yunyan's previous words of killing you still had an impact. Zhuozhuo felt that this was an unlucky year. Originally, with his foundation, he should have been able to win no matter how he looked at it. His power was already above Red's, so even if someone was causing trouble in Silent Destroyer Heaven, he could easily eliminate them. Only Shadow Song's appearance had truly struck him. Moreover, when he was suppressing Red with all his might, he had no choice but to destroy his own core. However, Zhuozhuo was not without a backup plan. He had used Ji Yunyan's special laws to revive himself in exchange for a chance to fight to the death. As long as he could regain some of his power in Silent Destroyer Heaven, it would depend on whether No Return's destructive power was stronger or Red's group could last longer. However, he just had to run into the battle between Ji Yunan and Jin Wuyin. This was like the last straw that crushed all of Zhuozhuo's plans. Now that he had escaped Red's pursuit, he did not even care about the astral world anymore. All he wanted was to get his body back. However, Ji Yunyan looked like he was going to fight to the death and did not communicate with him at all. If this continued, He might become the first Star Master in history to self-destruct. Zhuozhuo suppressed all her emotions and stepped into the spatial rift, ready to deal with any possible ambushes. Even though Jiyu Nianji had never done something like this before, no one knew if she was doing it on purpose to numb herself. What surprised her was that this time, Jiyu Nian did not continue to run. "We're here," Jiyu Nian said with a chuckle. However, when placed on her half-body, it was somewhat strange. Zhuozhuo frowned slightly and looked around, but did not find anything special. This was just an ordinary small world. Perhaps there were some special laws here, but wasn't it too much to think that he could rely on this to defeat her? With the difference in experience and knowledge between them, Zhuozhuo did not think that any geographical advantage could offset this. "I've reincarnated hundreds of times in the past and came here by accident," Jiyu Nian said unhurriedly. "At that time, I didn't understand what this place was. It was only after I left the astral world that I found some clues." Before she could finish, Zhuozhuo's expression changed slightly. She saw Jiyu Nian casually shoot out a beam of light towards the ground. Following this beam of light, this world was like an enraged lion. Countless laws surged towards Jiyu Nian's body. Zhuozhuo, who was beside her, naturally did not escape this calamity. The countless laws were like a giant eggshell, wrapping around the two of them and quickly dragging them to the ground. "There's actually an undiscovered black hole plane. You lunatic." Chapter 276. Add on the headline. Add on the headliner 1 text volume chapter 316 Dangers Edge H1A style equals color, #00F. Ref equals iml next chapter at ablilage border equals 0 t-artable border equals 0 align equals left t-artable border equals 0 align equals left t-artable border equals 0 align equals left trtdtr table purple sieve heaven. Jiyu Nan leisurely sat in his courtyard, sunbathing as he flipped through a newspaper. That's right, it was a newspaper. This newspaper was called the All Skies Daily, and it published the daily events of the All Skies world. As for its authority and credibility, one could tell just by looking at the newspaper's name. To be able to keep such a flashy name and not be swallowed up by others, one didn't need to think to know that it had an extraordinary background. The front page of today's All Skies Daily was devoted to the battle between Silent Destruction Heaven and the Astral Plane. This kind of battle between the Astral Plane and the Astral Plane might not even happen once every 10,000 years. After several years, it had finally come to an end, so of course there would be a detailed description of it. The newspaper started from the relationship between Zhuozhuo and Red, all the way to the final battle between the two. Many details were dug out, including Shadow Song, Jiyu Nian, and even Jiyu Nan. "I thought it was just a battle that not many people knew about. I didn't expect the whole world to be paying attention to it." Jiyu Nan smiled, feeling a bit strange. The longer he stayed in Purple Sieve Heaven, the more he felt that the world was very small. Purple Sieve Heaven was one of the top major planes, and it was also a superplane that was open to the public. A lot of information was gathered here, so people could see the world without leaving their homes. For example, the battle between Red and Zhuozhuo might be no different from the end of the world in the eyes of those involved, but in the All Skies world, it was nothing more than a casual conversation. And the experts who had the ability to interfere wouldn't join in before the battle was decided, adding to the risk. They could wait until the dust settled before dividing up the loser's territory. In any case, at that time, the victor would definitely be greatly injured. How much strength would he have left to fight with them for food? That was why the astral war was really not worth it. If they did not have absolute confidence, the astral lords would not easily start it. Jiyu Nan finished reading the contents of the newspaper. Not only did he understand the origins of Zhuozhuo and Red, he even understood the twists and turns of the final battle. Zhuozhuo's trump card is actually Jiyu Nian. Jiyu Nan couldn't help but laugh. He really wanted to tell Zhuozhuo that this woman who had been his sister for a period of time was a real poisonous snake. Whoever dared to use her would have to be prepared to be bitten back at any time. As for Zhuozhuo's current situation, the newspaper didn't mention it. It only said that they were still investigating. And in the newspaper, they talked about Jiyu Nian's special laws, the relationship between Shadow Song and Zhuozhuo, and of course, the 9 Serenities heavenly demon. This was probably the first time that Ji Yunan had entered the eyes of all the major planes of existence as a Nine Serenities heavenly demon. The news of the heavenly demon attracted a lot of attention. No one believed that this heavenly demon just happened to pass by, and they were more willing to see him as Red's trump card. So, it's the Nine Serenities heavenly demon. In the Seven-Star Alliance, Jiang Tingwei put down the newspaper in her hand and realized something. No wonder his physical strength was so strong. The All Heavens Daily also dug up the heavenly demon, Ji Yunan, in great detail. Many details were written about him since he became famous in the astral realm. For the front page, where every inch of land was worth gold, such treatment was comparable to that of a powerful astral lord. Her brother Jiang Zheng and Sichu Jing were sitting next to her. Sichu Jing exclaimed, "So, that Ji Yunan is a heavenly demon. Should we report him? Are you crazy?" Jiang Tingwei was shocked by her and blurted out. Jiang Zheng said, "Heavenly demons aren't necessarily evil. Besides, his strength is at least at the astral lord level. No organization would make an enemy of him for no reason." Both heavenly gods and heavenly demons were more like a special race in the All Heavens. They were born powerful and had their own bloodlines. The big forces would only try their best to recruit them. Why would they provoke them for no reason? That's true. I heard that there's a Nine Serenities heavenly demon hiding in the Milky Way heaven, but I haven't seen anyone enforce justice on behalf of the heavens, Sichu Jing mumbled. The Milky Way heaven was one of the 13 heavens. It was a true superdimension and the pinnacle of all the star dimension. It was said that there was a heavenly demon under the command of its astral lord. Let's pretend this didn't happen. This isn't something we can get involved in, Jiang Tingwei concluded. Let's continue to find some missions to do and avoid the destructive heaven for now. Ji Yunan got up from his residence and didn't stay any longer. He stepped out of the purple sieve heaven and went straight to the edge of the All Heavens. The All Heavens were very big. The dimensions were like bubbles that were squeezed into a small bottle. Some of the dimensions could be crossed, but some needed to be transferred. The dimension Ji Yunan wanted to go to was a place that required a few transfers. It was called Diluor World. When he arrived, Qianhan had been waiting for him for a while. "My lord." Qianhan revealed a fawning smile when he saw Ji Yunan appear, and he hurriedly moved over and greeted. Qianhan's level had been restored to level 4. Because Ji Yunan was going to the Golden Giant tribe, he had to lead the way. The God Emissary's level of power was limited to the God Kingdom. But ever since Qianhan found out about Ji Yunan's tricks, his loyalty had skyrocketed. Now, it was at 75 points. On the other hand, under Ji Yunan's watchful eyes, he couldn't play many tricks. Diluor World was a very small dimension. It was even smaller than the Ghost Sea world that Ji Yunan had been to, but the number of elites there was shocking. Ji Yunan had only been standing here casually, but he had already run into a few world breakers. As if sensing Ji Yunan's confusion, Qianhan said, "Mr. Diluor World is a frontline dimension. Once you leave this place, you'll reach the neutral zone. A little further and you'll reach the world of gods." "You know about the world of gods?" Ji Yunan asked, raising his eyebrows. Qianhan nodded solemnly. "The world of gods is like us. It's a naturally formed dimension cluster. With the protection of the dimension walls, it's difficult for outsiders to enter, but their elites often come out." After Qianhan's explanation, Ji Yunan finally understood the situation. Like the All Heavens and the world of gods, there were naturally many dimensions that were huddled together. People called them dimension clusters. With the existence of the dimension walls, it was difficult for outsiders to enter or leave. To the elites within the dimension clusters, the dimension walls were not guarded at all. They could come and go as they pleased. It was a blessed protection. This gave Ji Yunan a headache. If he couldn't enter the world of gods, it wouldn't be a good thing for his plan to kill gods. But Qianhan looked around again. The density of experts here is indeed higher than usual. Maybe some rare treasure has appeared. Just as he finished speaking, a strange power seeped into the sky. It turned into raindrops and began to fall. Each drop carried a thick aura of precepts. In front of Ji Yunan and Qianhan, A world breaker couldn't dodge in time. A drop of precepts fell on his head. His entire body aged rapidly. In an instant, his hair turned white. Finally, his organs failed and he died. This is the aging precepts. Chen Han said in shock. It's time. Ji Yunan grabbed Chen Han and used him as a shield. This is the power of Van Lun. What the hell is this place?